Right, good afternoon, everybody. I think we're at 2 o'clock now. And welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee at East Cambs District Council. First of all, we've got a fire safety warning for you. And Caroline, if you'll give that now.
Thank you, Chairman. We're not expecting a fire alarm, so if it does sound, please leave by the nearest available exit. That's the door you came in through, down the stairs, or this fire exit at the back here. Please don't use the lift. We can assist you if you would have needed to use it. And if you could meet at the barrier in the front car park, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we now have apologies and substitutions.
We have apologies from Councillor David Brown. Councillor Julia Huffer is here as host substitute. Apologies from Councillor Lavinia Edwards, with Councillor David Ambrose Smith as the substitute, and apologies from Councillor Gareth Wilson.
And they have we any apologies from Councillor Downey? No, okay. Thank you. Have we got any declarations of interest? Yes, Councillor Huffer.
I'm declaring a predetermined interest in agenda item number 5. As the ward member, I will speak, but then leave the room.
Okay, so you'll speak.
Like
You'll go to the speaker position. You'll give your speech. You'll then leave the room and take no part in that item, and we'll call you when that's dealt with. Thank you very much indeed. And the minutes of the last meeting, members, is there any reason why I should not later this afternoon sign those minutes off as being a true and accurate record? Any comment? No. Okay, so in which case I will sign those at the end of this meeting. We are fortunate in having Hannah Walker as a trainee in the Democratic Services. Is at her first meeting, and as ever, we'd like to say welcome, and we hope you enjoy your stay here. There's also another, I beg your pardon, she's over there. She's over there. Well, I hope she enjoys it. And for members and officers, we have at the end of this meeting, one of our members has contributed some mince pies so we can have a little bit of festivity when the meeting is finished. So those who wish to have a mince pie courtesy, Councillor Huffer would please stay on afterwards. And now we move on to item number 5. And can we have the officer presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. This is a slightly different format of report to those that you usually receive. But as you will have seen from the site visit this morning, there are areas of the development that are incomplete and that need to be addressed. These are the pumping station, which requires works to increase the capacity, the making good of the internal site road and provision of a pedestrian crossing, and landscaping of the open space area. The developer of the site became insolvent before these works were completed, and the site is being recovered by receivers. In an attempt to find a financially viable way to complete the site, the receiver approached the council with a request to vary the Section 106 agreement to convert the 10 affordable housing units on site to market units to unlock revenue to complete the site. The council commissioned an independent review of the financial information submitted by the receiver, requesting the testing of the information received to see whether we could accommodate any affordable housing regardless of tenure. But despite the effort of both officers and the receiver, there is no solution that enables both the delivery of affordable housing and completion of necessary works on site. The affordable housing is currently vacant as the receiver was unable to secure a registered provider to purchase the dwellings due to the incomplete nature of the development. Therefore, only 2 options exist: to allow the conversion of all affordable housing units on site to open market, which will enable successful completion of the site, or to continue with the requirement to secure affordable housing and leave the site incomplete with the existing issues, which will worsen over time. The officer recommendation is that members agree to remove the obligation to deliver affordable housing as part of the development to enable the site to be completed. If the committee refuses the request, then the council will have lost the opportunity to bring about a solution that enables the completion of the site. The Section 106 agreement also stipulates that the on-site public open space should be transferred to the district council, and at the time of transfer, pay a public open space maintenance contribution. The sale of the affordable housing will not generate sufficient funds to enable the receiver to pay the open space maintenance contribution. The council is again faced with two options for the site. One, agree to adopt the public open space and forego the future maintenance contribution, or agree that the public open space should be transferred to a private management company for maintenance. The receiver is already working on a management company for the pumping station, and if this is the option agreed, then the public open space will transfer with the pumping station to the management company. However, following discussions with the open space and facilities manager, it would not be a significant burden for the council to maintain the site without the maintenance contribution, as long as the maintenance of the site is limited to grass cutting only, because the council already has maintenance obligations in the area, and as such, the financial burden is reduced. Officers recommend, therefore, that the land is transferred to the council without a public open space maintenance contribution. If members are to agree to the recommendations of this report, the receiver has agreed to enter into any further legal agreements that may be required to ensure that the release of the affordable housing will facilitate the successful completion of the site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We've got two residents, Deborah Davis and Leah Cushing, who'd like to speak. You have 5 minutes between you, and there'll be a red light come on when you've hit the 5 minutes. And if you can turn your microphones on before you start to speak. You can sit down if you wish.
I'd rather stand. if that's
Okay,
okay.
entirely your choice.
In March 2021, residents began to move into Terrace Place. There were concerns early on that there were issues relating to the pumping system for the sewage and wastewater. Lorries would come and empty it, and we were told it was due to the building waste causing problems. But workers that came to empty the waste would say on more than one occasion that the system should never have been fitted and it was not fit for purpose and would not cope with 23 houses. And at that time, there were only a handful of residents living there. We then soon realised that not all was well with the Murfitt group, and one morning the site was empty. Many houses were left with issues, including flooding, unfinished work, holes in roofs and handrails falling from stairwells. The residents were told nothing, no letter or email to explain the disappearance of the staff. The site was left in a dreadful mess, and then the receivers arrived, stating that all would be well and things would be finished. And at this point, we had no road service, no street lighting, no footpaths, and the pump continued to block and foul. On a couple of occasions, the receiver did organise for the pump to be emptied, and then yet again, work had stopped on site and the pump was now a weekly problem. We had no communication. We have seen human waste rise to the top of the pump on many occasions, and we have lived for most of the last year and a half with the pump alarm ringing every few weeks, and often for weeks at a time without any action being taken. This has caused a huge amount of distress for those living in the vicinity, and we have been told that receivers have no money left to do any of the work needed. The unsold homes sit empty. I'm just going to pass a couple of photos around so you can see what I'm talking about. If you saw the state of the site, in addition to the issues relating to the pump, road and green spaces, it is clear that no housing association would ever buy them as a going concern. We have tried to find out what could be done and contacted the local MP, Ms Fraser, the District Council, the Parish Council, Environmental Health, Trading Standards and Anglia Water. We have had some support from the Environmental Health and Council, and they've acted in relation to the noise. The council have been in consultation with the receiver to find a way forward, and this has taken some time. The residents have, to put it bluntly, extremely stressed and upset about the whole experience. We have lived in fear of waste coming through into our homes or gardens, and children have lost sleep over noise. Residents are worried that they will be left with the home that they cannot sell, and we brought our homes in good faith, and now are very concerned that nothing will change. The stench and noise from the pump have been unbearable for some residents and will end up as a health concern. In fact, on Monday this week, it was clear that the pump was broken and full again with no alarm to tell us so. Yet again, the road was full of stench and it had been emptied only yesterday. We have tolerated enough now, and we want to move forward to see all the houses lived in and problems fixed. Most importantly, we just want our site to be left as it was promised 2 years ago. We were promised a green space to be used for all of us with trees, shrubs, and most importantly, a play area. We have 6 children under 12 on site and 1 on the way. We are left with a mountain of earth we cannot see over, which is unsafe for children to play on, and the proposal states there will be no play area. We have been told that the earth mound will not be removed, It's a health hazard for children and is unsightly. We are not getting what we were promised for our families. Therefore, we must make it clear that at the very least, we get a flat green space of grass, trees and somewhere to sit to compensate for the upheaval and stress that we have been caused. The site is frozen in time and there are no funds to fix the issues without this application being accepted. We still have no road surface, no street lighting, no footpaths, and the pump continues to block and fail to this day. The residents of Terrance Place want to make it our home and a place that is integral to the Fordham Village community. However, for this to happen, the serious issues relating to the site need to be rectified so we can move forward and look after Terrance Place for future generations.
Looking at the agenda and taking on what Debbie has spoken to you all now, we do have some questions for you all. When will the work take place? We need confirmation that this will take place before the sale of the remaining houses. Could you clarify the point regarding the management company? What is the future plan? Please clarify plans for the council adoption of the road and site. Clarify precisely what action will be taken to address the inadequate drainage. If losing the playground, what is suggested as the replacement? And please can you confirm what is included in the remedial work, the street lighting proposed?
Thank you, councillors.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you just sit down for a second, members may have some questions to ask you. Before we really get into the other members, you mentioned that you had no services such as street lighting and so can you tell me, so you don't have any street lights at all? What?
They come on if somebody goes past the door, but it only lights up your footpath. The road itself is in pitch darkness at night.
So these are the individual lights that
Lights.
you have outside your front door, which would be there whether there were street lights or not.
And at the moment, obviously, there's ironwork everywhere where there's no road. So if you're taking your bins down at night, I know the people at the top trip over the ironwork because it is pitch black.
Okay, are there any other services? You mentioned that the waste is insufficient, and I think I heard you say you had human waste in the street.
There are 5 houses on the main road that feed into the same pump system. In their contracts, it says they don't have to pay towards the pump system, but because they're lower than the pump system, when it fouls, in fact, one of them has complained that waste has come up into his garden.
Okay, and you've got 6 children on site. We were there this morning and and is that the area where there's 6 children who would want to inhabit that area and
Yes.
ride their bikes and things?
Residents. We have 6 children on site and 1 on the way, all under 12 or 13. We know that there are other play areas in the village and we accept that for the work to be done, that might not be a promised provided play space. And the zebra crossing will allow us to get to other play areas. But if we don't have a play area, we want somewhere safe for the children to kick a ball, sit, play, because we were promised a landscaped area.
Okay, just hang on if you can. Members, I don't think you can ask a question, Councillor Huffer, because you're fulfilling for this agenda item what a member of the public would do. Other members? Any questions? Yes, Councillor Trout.
Sorry, I thought I spoke loud enough. You
So
said
do I.
you had a consultation with all the residents about the play area?
Sorry. I used to give evidence in court, so I thought it was loud enough, but sorry. One resident doesn't communicate with us as a group of residents. The rest of us all do talk on a WhatsApp group. We have sort of come together to try and solve this issue. And both Leah, myself and Thea are sort of the task group that have done all the researching and finding out what our rights are, etc.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Edry.
Thank you. I'm so appalled to hear what you had to say, and I'm really sorry that you find yourself in this position, and I hope we can help. Am I right in thinking that the solution that is before us today is a solution that you and your other residents wishes to look at very seriously and agree.
Yeah, so we are for the proposal that the houses are converted into market value houses. So the receiver can put out a new pump and fulfill what was promised on the basis of what we bought our houses on.
Okay. Councillor Ambrose Smith.
Have you got a plan B that if the suggested actions go ahead, but then as we all know, during building work, you get unpleasant surprises. If there is a shortfall of money, is it likely that the residents would be asked to?
We, as far as we know legally, and we have received legal advice, we have no responsibility for that site until the site is finished. We are prepared to set up our own management company if it comes to that when the site is finished. Until the site is finished, we do not have responsibility for it, and we don't have funds to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say, I know it's very stressful for you, and I know it's your homes that we're dealing with, and can I congratulate you on your presentation, and I know it must have been a lot of stress for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillor. Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. So we now have a ward councillor, Julia Huffer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee for allowing me to address you today. This is a tragedy for the residents of Terence Place and a source of deep disappointment that it's come to this. No stone has been left unturned to try and find a solution that involves the retention of affordable housing. To the frustration of officers and myself, sadly, I have reluctantly come to realise that the affordable housing, one way or the other, is lost. At the moment, the houses stand empty and will remain empty unless the committee agrees with the recommendation from the officer. This truly is an chicken and egg situation. The houses are of no interest to any registered housing provider until the site is completed, and the outstanding issues settled with no money available unless these affordable housing units become market housing units to raise enough money to finish the site and settle the issues. The houses will remain empty, and the existing residents, who frankly have been living a nightmare, will be left in a miserable situation with a sewage system that is inadequate, an unfinished road and contaminated green space, and a dangerous road for children to cross to get to school. The existing residents bought houses in the perfectly reasonable expectation that the road would be finished, the green open space would be somewhere for their children to play, the sewage system would be sufficient for their needs without alarms going off for days at a time, and a much needed crossing would be in place. Instead, they're living in a perpetual building site. I've had residents in tears begging me to help them, and it has been extraordinarily frustrating that there has been so little I can do to help them until now. I cannot thank Emma Grimmer, Sally Bonnet from East Cams, and Anthony Kintish from the receiver for the enormous amount of work that has taken place over the last 6 months to get to this stage. The receiver could, frankly, have walked away, and I commend the passion, compassion and kindness shown by all in bringing this solution forward to you today. The officers have done their utmost to ensure the best outcome for everyone concerned. The decision now lies with you, committee. Please help my residents and agree with the recommendation so that this misery for them can end. I did have a conversation with the parish council on Monday in anticipation of a positive outcome. And because they will be receiving additional SIL money, which the developer had not already paid, if this is given the green light, I think that they could be persuaded to put in some play equipment onto the green open space, as long as it was a level green open space. From the conversation that we had today, I was given to believe only 30 millimeters was going to be taken off. Will it not be flattened and made like a green open space? Should look like a green open space, not just a smaller mound. I'm not sure if I can answer, but if yeah, thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much indeed. I think it would be reasonable in this case to ask the officer what is anticipated could be done on that central area.
Thank you, Chair. It's understood that some of the earth would be taken off and a membrane would then be put on, and then it would be turfed and seeded. And that is what we have agreed going forward. So it wasn't planned that it would go to a complete down to the road level as a flat site. But I think it could be levelled, but it wouldn't be in line with the site road.
Yes,
I'm not
yes.
saying it has to be on level with the road, but in order to be able to put play equipment on it, it can't be a mound. That would just be a recipe for disaster. So even if you were just going to put a swing and a bench or a seesaw or something on it, it needs to be a flat surface to be able to, at the very least, to start with.
I think that's something we can work towards, but it like I say, it won't be in line or in level with the road.
Or a compromise can be reached where at least the children have somewhere that's flat and safe to play.
I think if I was asked my opinion, it would be that we could try and aim for a higher level, not a mountain. And that would seem to be something pragmatic, but clearly there wants to be an easy area where children of all ages can access and feel safe.
And abilities, it's not every child is able-bodied, so it would need to be easy access for children who aren't able-bodied.
I didn't grasp that.
I said not every child is able-bodied, so it would have to be easy access for children who aren't able-bodied as well.
Well, being pragmatic, get as near as it can be. Councillor Ambrose-Smith.
Mention was made of a safe crossing across the main road for children. Would it be worth approaching the parish council to see if they could consider doing a local highways bid from county to get for the installation of a zebra crossing?
As I understand it, that this scheme includes the zebra crossing or the pedestrian crossing to make it safe for them to cross from one side to the other. To access the hillside. This is all part of that solution. So this is why it's really key that this goes ahead.
I have a final question for you. As far as I could see from my visit this morning, if in the normal run of affairs, some of the families who are resident there now wanted to sell, that they would, unless we make a decision here today, it would be difficult for the residents there to sell their properties if they had another job or had domestic circumstances changed or something. It would be very difficult at the moment. Am I right in that?
I would think it would be almost impossible to sell without taking an enormous financial hit, which I think is completely unreasonable. These residents are in this situation this is not their fault. This is purely and simply because a builder's gone bankrupt.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would talk about blame here. Anyway, members, any questions for the ward councillor? Okay, thank you very much indeed. You're now going to leave the room, Councillor Huffer, and we will send to you when the item has been dealt with. Okay, now we have gone. Has the officer got any extra comments to make? Any members got questions? Yes, Councillor Jones for the officer.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I wasn't on the this morning, but I did see you around the site previously. I was in a very similar situation with Crofton Homes in Kingfisher Drive in Soham, where the builder went bankrupt, Crofton. I never quite understood it. Is there supposed to be an indemnity policy taken out, you know, when the builder's put in to cover case of bankruptcy? Or that's what I had heard, but I didn't know if that was the case or anything like that. Good, any comment?
I don't think I can answer that. I'd have thought there would have been something, but I can't comment on this builder.
Yes, go ahead.
Just for information's sake, I think for all. So indemnity policy is up to the builder to take on. It's not the insistence of planning commission to get them to take it out as part of their planning.
No, that's not something that's covered in the planning. That's not, it's beyond our remit.
Councillor Trapp.
sorry. In section 3.3, it doesn't make any mention of lighting. Is that included within the making good of the internal site roads?
It's my understanding that lighting, if the road becomes adoptable, then with the local highways authority, that is something that they may do. But it's also the responsibility in terms of street lighting is a parish council is paid for from that. So from a planning point of view, we don't have to insist on it and it's not part of the scheme. So it would be down to highways and potentially the parish council.
But I think the residents were saying how dark it is. Even one light would be quite a good thing to have there. And the other one is also in point 2. It says provision of a pedestrian crossings. Is that one or more pedestrian crossing?
Sorry, that's one.
It's one. So it doesn't go along the main road. It's not that way. It's just across the.
It is across the main road.
Right. Thank you very
Councillor Ambrose Smith.
I was really appalled at the state of the waste provision with the sewage and so on sort of appearing. Surely a suitable size infrastructure is part of the planning process. You know, what has happened that a development of however many properties have been provided with a really inadequate disposal system. I mean, how would this have happened?
Essentially, we received details of the sewage system from the then developer. And we've not discharged that condition yet because the lead local flood authority and that have been involved have raised concerns. And he's obviously gone on and put in what he thought was acceptable. And we are now having to deal with the fallout from that.
Are you satisfied?
Well, can I just come back? I mean, surely this is a fundamental early stage part of building the site. Does no one check at that stage? I mean, this seems bizarre to me. I mean, you know, you don't sort of put in a pipe which you think might be okay, and then when the houses are all built, oh no, well, perhaps it should have been twice the size. I mean, surely this should have been picked up initially.
There's clearly been errors in the construction. And, you know, that's what we're here to do, try and put it right. Councillor Trapp.
follow on from that. Doesn't building control that have a look at what size has been put in? Isn't that what they're there for? Their raison d'etre.
So this is questions to officers. So officers, there's a question to answer for Councillor Trapp, and then also any statements you'd like to make in addition to that.
With regard to the capacity, that is something we are looking into because we understood that what was put in place was satisfactory, or clearly not, but we've also found that the stormwater is going into the foul water, which is not a normal situation. So that is why we're having to deal with it differently.
Okay, is there anything you'd like to add independent of Councillor Trapp's question? Okay, so we're now going to move on to debate. Councillor Everly.
I would like to propose that we accept the recommendations of our officer. I can't see how a debate would benefit what we're doing here. From my point of view, it's just a no-brainer. I think we just have to do it. So I would like to propose.
Well, I would like to, I'll accept, we continue with the debate if members want to. I'll accept your recommendation. And actually, I would add my name as being a seconder to that. So, members. Councillor Jones and then Councillor Trapp.
Thank you, Chair. No, I think I'm in agreement with Councillor Every. I know it went on for years, the road not being fixed outside on a personal notes, you know, it took about 6 years to get done. So yeah, if it's not acted upon, it won't get done by anybody else. So I think we need to bite the bullet and take and pass this.
I also would agree with Councillor Every that water recommended. I would actually think about very seriously about putting lighting in, because I think that is a major concern there. And I think that's quite important. And it also means that some children can play on the play area, or adults. Exactly. And I hope that the public space will be actually well used by everyone in Terence Place. So yeah, yes.
David Ambrose Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, obviously I'm for this and go to the vote as quickly as we can, but I'd like to at the same time applaud the officers for bringing this to the committee in this particular state. They've worked hard on it and for everybody concerned. So well done indeed.
Okay, well, I think it's quite clear this is an unusual situation for this council to find themselves in. I would appreciate. I agree totally with Councillor David Ambrose Smith, and I think the way that officers have found what appears to be a way through this nightmare which the residents have been suffering, and I feel it's one of our duties is to make life a little bit better for our residents, and I hope we will be going to a vote soon. And from what I hear, it sounds as though it would be a positive result. And I would just like to thank you for your tolerance and your tenacity in coming here this afternoon. So, Councillor Stubbs.
Obviously, I agree with everything that's been said before me, but is there anything we can stop to prevent this from, anything we do to stop this from happening again? My only concern would be that we'll be giving the green light to other developers who are not so responsible and conscientious, that if all else fails, East Cambs will step in and save the day. So is there anything, we have Christine Ambrose Smith said a few things about, could we have not spotted this? And I do appreciate you've been very measured in what you're saying, and obviously you can only go on what people tell you, and if people back things up, you know, you can't go out checking every pipe in the district. But is there anything we can do to safeguard against this happening again?
I'm trying to think of a way to answer this, because it comes back to, we can't check every single pipe or whatever. From a planning point of view, we wouldn't do the inspections in terms of how the final build is or anything like that. So we rely on that information coming to us. We go out to consultants or consultees, and they give us the response back, and we work on that basis. I think this is a very unique situation, and I would like to think it wouldn't happen again in my time, because I've been doing this job a long time and I've never come across it. So it is a rare situation, and you know, as a local authority, we have been proactive trying to support the residents in that respect.
We've got Councillor Trapp.
Thank you. Just to support Councillor Stubbs on this, it is important, I think. And it seems to me in this case, it's probably because the surface water is being put into the same place as the foul water, and therefore the pump cannot cope. And shouldn't that have been, that must have been in the plan somewhere, where the surface water was going to be separate.
Again, that comes back to that we as a planning authority wouldn't be checking that. That might be, they would potentially have their own inspectors, so we wouldn't have any control on the actual build.
Okay, we're going to the vote. The vote is, and it's we have a proposal from Councillor Every, which is seconded by me, that we accept the officer's recommendations. And first of all, that is to note items A to D, And then the second is to instruct the Director Community to agree a deed of variation as in A and B. And I'm going to put, and members are further requested to instruct the Director Legal to complete a separate legal agreement to ensure that the council secures agreement that revenues released from the delivery of affordable housing will be used to address the issues identified in small I, A to D. Now, is everybody happy with that? And I'm going to go to a vote, and those in favour of that action, please raise their hands.
That's unanimously in favour.
Well, if that's unanimous, thank you very much indeed. So that has now been accepted. Okay, anyone who wants to leave is welcome to leave now, but you're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting should you wish. I think she's. Councillor Ambrose-Smith, do you think you could interrupt Councillor Huffer's conversation outside and ask her if she'd like to come in? I suspect you know the result of the situation. We're now going to move on to item number 6. And Anne, would you like to make your proposal?
Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Just a little bit of housekeeping to kick off before we start on the report. I'd like to add an additional condition regarding a travel plan. So that would be 35 in the list of conditions. I'd also like members to recommend an amendment to the recommendation. You've got it in front of you. It's 1.1 and the wording in bold. So the recommendation would be to approve, but to reword conditions 22 to 24 and or secure changes to the Section 106 agreement. And then it carries on to complete the Section 106 agreement and to issue the planning permission, blah, blah, blah. Okay.
If I can just interrupt, all members have this sheet of paper, and so they're all aware of what we're discussing now. Okay, can you continue, please?
Okay. Okay, so this is the former West Mill food site in off of Angel Drove. The site is edged in red on the slide. Angel Drove runs along. Can you see this clearly, or do you want me to point it out or with a little red? No? Yes? No, okay. Okay, so Angel Drove runs along the southern boundary. The area to the northwest, which is coloured shaded lilac, is the Angel Droves Drains County Wildlife Site. It is in the same ownership, but it does not form part of the planning application. And here we have it all its glory, the aerial views. Again, you can see to the southwest of the site is Ely City Centre. The railway station is within walking distance, and an existing public right-of-way runs along the northwestern boundary, and which will be opened up and improved as a consequence of the scheme. There is also a public right-of-way which skirts the site on the northwestern corner and then veers north into the county wildlife site. You can just make it out. All the buildings, as you can see, have been removed and levelled. Areas to the northeast are still operating in a commercial use
members that attended the site visit earlier will have seen that the Hanson sort of cement works is still operating, and there's a car repair shop, I think, just on the entrance into the site. Okay. Okay, as you can see, we're looking at the site from Angel Grove. Obviously, it makes, at the moment, it just makes a negative contribution to the street scene and the character of the area. Here's a snapshot of some slides indicating the surrounding area. So you've got views through the site, and then you've got like the middle one is views of the park, the playing fields on the western boundary, and then the public right of way that skirts the northwestern boundary. So the proposal. The scheme comprises 78 build to rent dwellings, which will be owned, managed and maintained by the same company. The scheme has been reduced from 116 initially. It comprises 26 two-bedroom dwellings, 52 three-bedroom dwellings, and 1,800 or 1,800 square meters or 1,900 square foot of B1A, or now classified as Class E office space. There's also associated landscaping and parking. 78 parking spaces are proposed, with 7 visitor car parking for the residential uses and 17 car parking spaces with 3 disabled spaces for the commercial uses. There would be 2 cycle spaces per dwelling and 66 cycle spaces for the commercial units. It's worth pointing out now that the scheme would not provide any affordable housing due to the unviability of the proposal. The applicant has submitted a financial viability appraisal, and this has been independently assessed by the council's independent consultant. A review of the FBA has also been undertaken, and this has been independently assessed. A number of mechanisms are proposed and would be the subject of the Section 106 agreement to ensure that a review is carried out if the scheme is not substantially implemented, i.e. the slab level on 10 plots within 2 years. A late stage review at 75% of the units being occupied has also been advised by the council's independent consultant, which would reveal the final sales values and build costs. It is worth also stating that the review mechanism will mean that the council gets affordable housing if the viability changes or improves. Okay, so this is the proposed site plan. At the top of the screen is a linear park. Do you want me to use my zapper, or are you quite, if I just go through it? Yep, okay. At the top of the screen is a linear park, which will incorporate the public right of way. Now, the public right of way initially didn't actually have any connectivity with the site because there was like fencing up. So now it's actually being brought into the development. So that will run along the north boundary. It's actually northwestern, but north boundary. And it will run through, it will connect through, I've got to show you. So, okay, so it will come via Potter's Lane, which it normally does. This is now going to be, can you hear me? Sorry. This is now going to be an emergency access for vehicles if they need to, if the other access is blocked. So this will be cycling and pedestrian. So you can come through, follow this route around, which is the route of the public right of way. And then there's a connection point here, which continues with the public right of way going into the county wildlife site. And then again, it will continue through into the existing public right of way, which skirts the application site and the playing fields to the west. While I'm here, I may as well show you. This is the attenuation basins here. Here are the commercial units. And then there are like breakout areas of sort of recreational public sort of amenity areas. And this area here is called the home zone. And it plays a pivotal sort of role in the community cohesion, because it's a kind of area where everyone can integrate and mix. And there's going to be sort of benches and sort of tables and areas for the children to play. And there are also sort of areas here around the attenuation basins, again, where members of the community can mix. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so the main planning considerations are again the principle of development, residential amenity, visual amenity, highway safety, ecology and other matters. So turning to the principle of development, the site is located within two policy areas, namely policy Ely 7, which supports a vision for an attractive gateway into Ely with high quality offices and some apartments framing the views of the cathedral. And policy Ely 8, which relates to the West Mill food site to be developed comprehensively for a mix of employment uses, including offices and apartments and houses. Therefore, it is acceptable in principle. I need to add anything here. Okay, so with regards to residential amenity, existing residential properties in Potters Lane would have, so again, I've shown you where Potters Lane is. Can you see if I move the cursor here? Okay, so this is Potters Lane coming down, and there's a new development of two houses on that boundary, which I should just sort of sashay over here and show you that's represented there. So the relationship now with the existing occupiers is sufficiently distant to avoid any material harm. In terms of future occupiers along Angel Drove, there are a number of constraints, namely the traffic along Angel Drove, and therefore a number of the properties would be subject to mechanical ventilation on the windows that front Angel Drove. However, these buildings would also act as a barrier to improve the residential amenity of other dwellings. So bearing in mind that the scheme fronts a busy highway and enjoys existing industrial uses, on balance, the scheme would deliver an acceptable standard of living for future occupiers of the site. When members attended the site visit earlier, the Hanson concrete factory, or the plant there was in operation, and therefore it's being cited, it's proposed to cite the commercial development, so also to act as a kind of barrier to lessen the noise when that machinery is operating. It's not clear if it operates all the time. It's probably residents will probably correct me, but with the environmental health team have tried to contact Hanson to find out when they actually do operate. But suffice to say, it's considered that with the use of mechanical ventilation and that certain buildings acting as a barrier, that the residential amenity of future occupiers is not injurious to recommend refusal. Okay, in terms of visual amenity now, we've got views of Angel Drove. Now, this is a cunning plan here, was to actually include the outline of the development in red. I don't know whether you can see it on the bottom where my cursor is. No? Oh, you can, jolly good. So the top one is before, and the bottom one is after. Okay, and the next one is a view taken from the southern bypass. Now you'll be lucky if you can see this, because I've tried to look, but I can actually. So again, here we go before, and then after, and it's just here. You can just see where the top is there. So again, views of the cathedral would not be obscured by the scheme. So going to house typologies, let me catch up with my notes here. I'm getting ahead of myself. Yes, these would be the 2-bedroom units, and taken as reference housing within the the core of Ely down by the river. So that's the kind of design of those the housing there. Again, brick banding as well as gable treatment is also found within the streets of Ely, as evidenced by the photographic evidence here. Again, here we've got the townhouses. Now these are the ones that would front Angel Drove. So you can see how this is just a CGI, obviously. Here we have the Angel Drove coming along here, and then there'd be like the barrier of trees, shrubs, and then you've got another linear park where residents can break out, and you've also got patio areas of the townhouses that can sit out and enjoy, again, public interaction. And what's worth showing you is that within the townhouses, you've got like 3 stories. And then on the second floor, I don't know if you can make out, but you've got like an open terrace, which is enclosed but you can open the windows here if you require. So you've got quite a large area out on the top floor. Here we've got a CGI of the commercial buildings, again taking as reference buildings within the Ely core. And then street scenes. So I do need to go back to my notes here because you can't actually see on the little map at the top of the screen where everything is. So the top street scene is a view of the middle of the site running along here. So looking northwards. So that's the top one. The middle one is a view through the site taken from the access going down horizontally. And then the bottom one is the view of the internal roads, not from Angel Grove. This is like looking towards the front of the buildings within the internal sort of roadway running along here. So again, landscaping now it plays quite an integral part in the overall scheme. It's categorized into different elements. So at the top of the site is the woodland glade area, and that serves as a transition between the more active home zone here and the woodland walk that runs along the linear sort of park here. The home zone, as I've said here, is kind of like an important integral part of the scheme where it allows members of the community to mix and get to know each other. The gateway area is coming along here, which is the central avenue, which hopes to integrate sort of elements of landscaping, trees and shrubs to again integrate it between the Angel Grove and the county wildlife site and the home zone there. And then you've got, again, like you've got these naturalistic sort of green areas. You've got areas down here on the left-hand side. You've got seating around and play equipment, natural play equipment around the attenuation basins, and then within the home zone, and then of course through the woodland glade. This is just sort of a snapshot of the woodland glade. So you've got pathways, you've got existing trees, the existing bun, natural players, picnic shelters, and then you've got the existing vehicle access, emergency vehicle access. On the left-hand side, you've got sort of a sense of what they're trying to achieve on the woodland glade. And again, you've got another CGI of the home zone area. Okay, so highway safety. Local highway have considered the scheme and would use the existing entrance, which would use the existing entrance from Angel Grove. A number of improvements to the Angel Grove roundabout design and of the Angel Grove crossing and shared path are being proposed. This is what is being referred to in the addendum to allow some degree of negotiation between the local highways authority, the council and the applicants as to whether the scheme would be, the conditions would be amended or reworded or incorporated into the Section 106 agreement. But so here we go, is a sort of a blow up of the work. So you've got the pedestrian crossing here, controlled crossing across Angel Grove here. You've got 2 metre wide footways increase here either side of the access road, here and here. You've got the widening of the splitter islands on the side here and on here. Dropped curbs and tactile paving. You've got shared use footways, cycleways of 3 metres on the southern side of Angel Grove between Station Road and the zebra crossing, and widening of existing footway on the north side of Angel Grove between the site access and the zebra crossing. And you've got the swept path analysis, so it demonstrates that it can be of an adoptable standard, and the highways have agreed with this. And parking proposed. In discussions with the council, a reduced amount of parking has been agreed, and this is due to the location of the site within easy access of the station, the city centre, and a diverse range of sustainable modes of transport. So the scheme also promotes permeability around the site and through the site for both walking and cycling. Therefore, the scheme proposes 78 with 7 visitor car parking spaces for the residential uses, 17 parking spaces and 3 disabled spaces for the commercial uses, 2 cycle spaces per dwelling and 66 spaces for the commercial units. In terms of ecology and biodiversity, the development would result in a small loss in biodiversity, and the Wildlife Trust fully acknowledged that the site previously supported an industrial buildings, and had an assessment been undertaken prior to their removal, the proposed scheme may well have demonstrated a net gain in habitat units. As a consequence, the applicants are proposing to make an off-site contribution towards ecological enhancements on the neighbouring Angel Droves County Wildlife Site. In terms of short infrastructure, there's a shortfall in public open space, and therefore an off-site contribution it would be required, and contributions towards early years provision, libraries and lifelong learning would also be required. Again, the financial viability assessment has been submitted and reviewed by the council's independent consultant, and we've said before the scheme would be unviable if it had to provide affordable housing. In terms of the historic environment, archaeology, drainage, sustainability, accessibility and ground contamination, consider that sufficient information has been provided to the satisfaction of our technical consultees, and further information can be provided by condition if required. So the recommendation to conclude, the site has stood in an undeveloped state for a considerable period of time, and as a gateway into the city, the proposal would regenerate this area and improve the visual amenities when entering Ely. To conclude then, the application site is located within 2 policy action areas, which propose to regenerate the station gateway action area. Although a comprehensive scheme cannot come forward at the present time, the application has been assessed on its individual merits and is considered to meet with the aspirations of policy Ely 7 and Ely 8 of the local plan. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions and the satisfactory completion of a Section 106 legal agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and that's quite a mouthful. We've now got Dr. Anne Thornton. I think you know you've got 5 minutes, and if you turn the microphone on, great, thank you.
Have to talk fast. So good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
If you could get the microphone near your mouth, sorry.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me? Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this. I just have one quick question. When councillors did the site visit this morning, did you come to the Potters Lane entrance to the site, or were you based around Angel Drove? Angel Drove. Okay, so I
can answer that. We didn't go to the Potters Lane, but I can tell you that personally I've been there at least 3,000 times in my lifetime, and I'm very familiar with it.
Excellent, as am I. So I have a number of points that I would like to bring up, and this is in consultation with other neighbours in both Potters Lane and Dovehouse Close. We're concerned about the requirement to remove mature trees. There seems to be an indication that a number of mature trees will be removed and then replaced. So it seems ludicrous to chop down one tree and plant others. This is on the site, the opposite side, adjacent to what's now number 35 Potters Lane. So there's trees just there, which are scheduled, I believe, they were deemed to be G4 trees, and they're actually mature trees. So we just wanted to find out whether there was a need to remove those. Also leading to biodiversity, and I'm pleased that the planning and the development company are now going to enhance the county wildlife site. I would just say that it's not correct that it's a public right of way up adjacent to the county wildlife site. It's a permissive path, has been evidenced by a number of signs that have gone up in recent months saying permissive path only. It's not a public right of way adjacent to the county wildlife site. In terms of other species, there's a wide biodiversity in the region, including I've recorded sparrowhawks, hedgehogs, greater spotted and green woodpeckers in the garden, in my back garden over the last 12 months. So that brings me to the small gathering spaces. And I think that the location of the home zone doesn't indicate that, in fact, if you look at the other plans with the annotated diagrams, there are a number of small gathering spaces quite close to the footpath and quite close to the county wildlife site. And we've had numerous discussions with neighbours that whilst we recognise that the public and the picnic shelter has now been removed, which was a cause of some concern, there's still the worry about disturbance and increased disturbance, noise, antisocial behaviour and litter from these, quotes, sheltered and small gathering spaces. I understand from the developers that there will be an independent management company responsible for addressing any antisocial behaviour or litter emanating from these gathering spaces. But kind of, is that really the sort of tranquil woodland setting that's a natural transition from the development site through to the county wildlife site? And certainly I and a number of the neighbours that have contributed to the WhatsApp group have kind of said, well, all the amenity spaces that are there for the benefit of the residents, of the new residents, are being placed on the periphery, and the disturbance from those amenity spaces is being visited on the existing residents of Dove House Close and Potters Lane. And we're wondering how that will be mitigated. In addition, the plans show a sort of vague indication that there will be an increased boundary alongside the footpath adjacent to number 50, the fence line of number 50 Dove House Close. You can see the top red line of the site there. On one of the other annotated plans, it shows to an increase in boundary provision to maintain privacy. Now, we've no indication as to what height or material that boundary fence will be constructed of. There's been no indication as to how that would be constructed. Ideally, plant it with native species hedgerow. Moving on, down Potters Lane, increasing the pedestrian and cycle routes, which is all very well and good. However, it's leading straight down Potters Lane onto a lethal junction at Potters Lane, Broad Street and Back Hill. And I know several friends who've had accidents at that junction. Is there any mitigation for putting a crossing at that junction to help with that throughput there increase? You've said that there are only going to be 78 spaces. We already have problems around Dove House Close and Potters Lane with people parking on the double yellow lines and across the encroaching on our driveway access, accessing the station with only one space per dwelling. In spite of all the wonderful transport amenities, it's bound to lead to an increase in unsafe parking along those two streets. And I think I've covered everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If you'll just wait there. Members, have you got any questions for Dr. Thornton? Councillor Trout.
Thank you very much. Yes, the parking is going to be an issue, isn't it? I mean, when we were looking at it this morning, coming up from the roundabout at Angel Grove, there were a huge number of cars parked there. Some, I think, associated with the garage, but I'm sure there are others who are associated with railway people, commuters. I don't know. But if you're saying that there's a lot of car parking on yellow lines up Potters Lane and is it
Dove House Close?
Dove House
Yes.
Close. That is also, you think there might be more, some of these dwellers might be going over there.
I would venture to suggest that if you are visiting the new development and it's a cold, rainy December morning, or you're arriving at the offices, in spite of the very good transport links that there already are, I think a lot of people would drive on a rubbish winter's morning. We already get people parking on the street and on double yellow lines and across our drives and wheeling suitcases down to the station. I see no reason to think that with with such great access. I mean, it's literally a 2-minute walk along the footpath down into the development. So even if we're not getting residents of the new development parking there, it's highly likely that their visitors will be told, oh, it's all right, you can just park around the corner on Dove House Lane or Dove House Close or Potter's Lane, and you can just nip through.
Okay, a similar parking thing that it seems apparently there's about 100 employees possible at the office spaces. I think there's going to be just can't remember now. So it's not much parking. 17 car parking spaces for the commercial users. That's not very much, is there?
I think on the original, when the original application was put in, when I looked at it and saw that there was a reduced parking, the indication was that people would use public transport to get to the offices. And that's why I go back to saying that, yes, that would be perfect on a lovely summer's morning. But I would think that more people than not would want to use their cars, particularly if they knew that there was a very close free parking space nearby, streets to park on. I would.
Members. I'd like to ask you a question, if I may. Did I pick up that you said that the path that goes from Potter's Lane to the playing fields belongs to someone else and it's only a permissive path?
Can I show you on the plan? It's easier to.
Can we have a look on the plan? I'm talking about the bit along the top that goes in the wooded area from Potter's Lane down, from there down to the playing fields. There's a straight path there. You're saying that's a permissive?
No, the permissive path is if you come along that public footpath there and turn right and going up adjacent to, it's possibly easier to see on the site plan that showed the county wildlife site.
That's the one that goes up to the edge of the golf course.
Yes. The linking path, there's a public footpath that comes through past the tennis courts of King's School, and leads on to the golf course.
Yes.
And then there's another one that comes along public right of way number 41, which is the one that we were talking about, that comes from Potter's Lane and goes down adjacent to the playing fields. But that linking path with the wildlife site on the right hand side, there is a path there. That isn't a public right of way, that's a permissive path. Yeah.
Because I have a dream of connecting Cambridge Road to the railway station for cyclists and then preventing them coming down Potter's Lane and Back Hill, which would be safer for cyclists and also would stop the cars being annoyed by slow people going up the hill. So the permissive path is the bit that's going north from up there. That's the permissive path. No, that's the drain. Yeah, that's it. And so that remains.
That one is the permissive path, because there've been signs put up saying permissive path only, not public right of way, on that link, on that path. So
so your concerns are that there's going to be cars parked in Potter's Lane and Dove House Close?
One of the concerns, yes. One of the, I mean, the other concerns are with the emergency vehicle access and motor vehicle traffic, how that's going to be prevented. But yes, increased parking and the safety of the junction. If you're going to increase cycling and pedestrians along Potter's Lane, they're going to spit out at that crossroads. I'm sure you know it. It's a very familiar with it. Yeah, very little junction, and frequently have accidents there. So with an increase in pedestrians and cyclists along there, I noticed that the crossings are there for Angel Drove, but there seems to be nothing helping pedestrians and cyclists cross Station Road back hill and go on to Broad Street and end up going into the centre.
There was an accident there the other day. Nevertheless, members, any questions? No, thank you very much indeed. And now we have the applicant agent, Neil Jones. You've got 5 minutes, Mr. Jones, and a red light will go on when you've hit it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Neil Jones. I'm the planning consultant for the applicant Godwin. The officer's recommendation for approval is very welcome, and the report before you provides both a robust assessment of the planning merits of the proposals and a clear rationale for the grant of planning permission. Nevertheless, I trust it will be helpful to highlight key aspects of this application for the committee. This development will bring back into productive use a brownfield site which has remained vacant for many years. The proposals before you will enhance this gateway site and provide a stimulus to wider redevelopment and regeneration consistent with the council's policy objectives for this part of the city. The development will deliver 78 dwellings and 1,845 square metres of flexible office space in a sustainable location, helping to meet the district's housing needs and supporting local economic growth. A package of financial contributions towards education, libraries and off-site open space will be secured through a Section 106 legal agreement, in addition to a SIL contribution of over £680,000, which will support the provision of local community infrastructure. Off-site highways works will also be secured that will improve pedestrian and cycle accessibility into the local area, as we have heard. A comprehensive financial viability appraisal, which has been independently assessed and agreed by the council's appointed consultant, has demonstrated that the development would be wholly unviable if also asked to provide affordable housing. Nevertheless, the Section 106 agreement will include both early and late stage reviews, which will ensure that an appropriate provision of affordable housing can be made should this viability position change. The proposed dwellings can comprise a mix of high quality 2 and 3 bedroom homes, whilst the proposed office space will suit small and medium-sized businesses, providing local employment opportunities. A suitable level of car parking and cycle storage is made within the development, consistent with the highly accessible location of the site, close to local facilities and public transport, encouraging sustainable transport choices. The scheme also provides attractive new green space for the use of residents and the local community, and will deliver biodiversity enhancement through a combination of on-site and off-site improvements within the adjacent county wildlife site. The development will utilise modern methods of construction, resulting in less construction waste, reduced CO2 and embodied carbon, quicker on-site construction, improved quality control, better energy efficiency and less on-site disturbance. As a build-to-rent scheme, the development will remain in single ownership and provide high-quality, professionally managed and maintained homes for rent. The build-to-rent model is characterised by high levels of customer service and greater security of tenure than traditional private rented accommodation. The proposed development responds directly to a lack of good quality homes for rent in the local area. It will therefore help to meet growing demand from young couples and families with children. Finally, I can confirm that the applicant is very eager to get on with the development, and the committee can be assured that the approval of this application will secure the much needed regeneration of this long vacant and currently unattractive gateway site. The officer's report confirms that the proposals comply with the development plan and that there are no outstanding statutory consultee objections or any material considerations that would justify a refusal. I therefore respectfully ask that the committee approve this application in accordance with your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you'll just wait there a second. Members, questions? Christine Ambrose-Smith.
No, I applaud your development, proposed development. However, the previous speaker did raise several points about parking non-residents. I'm just wondering, would it be feasible to have some sort of barriers so the home, well, there won't be homeowners, but the residents would have some sort of swipe card, as we have to get through this building here. But then, of course, you get to the point of deliveries. Well, our own home, we must have 2 or 3 deliveries per week on a good week. So similar things there, grocery deliveries. And then how would you deal with the business aspect? I mean, have you thought about trying to restrict the commuters who want to avoid paying for parking? And I understand why they do it. I would probably think about doing that myself, you know, but I can see parking would be an issue. We have a large estate in the community that we represent, and parking there is a nightmare. You know, it's not going to go away. If people are working at these business units and they live in Blackhouse or Pie Moor or some other remote thing, you know, they're not going to travel on a bike. They're going to get the car out because they will. So have you sort of, could you see how you could improve the access, you know, to dissuade people from using it as a car park? Sorry, that's a very long question.
Yeah, thank you. Parking is something that we've looked at in detail as part of our work on this scheme. This is a scheme that's been in progress for over 2.5 years. And through that process, we've worked very closely with the officers and the local highways authority to look at parking and highways matters in particular. I mean, I think it's important to say that this is a highly accessible site within close proximity to the station and the city centre. Our view is that our responsibility is to encourage people to make sustainable transport choices. Each home does have a parking space. There are visitor spaces within the scheme. And there are parking spaces provided for the commercial facility. So parking has been considered in great detail. There will be an overarching management plan for the development. Because it's a build to rent development, it's all owned and operated by one investor or operator. And therefore, if there are, quotes, repeat offenders in terms of commuters that are parking on the site, it will be possible for the management company to take action and dissuade them from doing that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the precise details of how that would be, but my point is, unlike a traditional housing scheme, where there is no one party, you know, maintaining responsibility for the whole site, one of the benefits of a build to rent scheme is that there is a party responsible for the overall upkeep and maintenance of the project. And that can include matters like, you know, parking for people who are non-residents.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I did have a similar question about parking, really. The location to the school seems quite far away, and you mentioned families in it. Do you really feel they're within walking distance, or are you expecting them to cycle and things like
that? As I said, I think that there are a number of facilities that are within easy access of the site. We expect that housing will be attractive to a whole range of occupiers. The research on build to rent properties shows that it can be targeted at couples and families anyway from sort of age 25 all the way through to age sort of 49. So it's quite a wide spectrum of occupiers. It's not only families that will be interested in the scheme. I think this is an exciting opportunity for Ely and East Cambridgeshire, in that this is the first build to rent scheme that's come forward for the district. It's a model of housing that's become increasingly popular in the UK. It's very common in Europe, and it provides increased choice for renters with a quality product.
Councillor Huffer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if this is a question for you or question for the officer or a question for both of you. I'm struggling to understand why there's no affordable housing on here. I can understand you're saying that the model doesn't, that the numbers don't add up, but I've got three schemes. In fact, we've just tragically been talking about a scheme of total of 27 houses. 10 of which were
Can I
affordable.
suggest you direct questions to
Sorry, yes.
the
So-
applicant
so-
now, and then you will have the opportunity
Yes,
to
I'm
question
not sure
later.
it's applicable to. I've got three large schemes in my village. Two have got 40% affordable housing, and one has got 30% affordable housing. Okay, the numbers aren't quite as there, 175 houses, I think, 100 in one, 75 in another, 150 in another. You've got 78 houses here, none of which appear to be in the affordable range. And to my rough calculation, technically, if we're going for 30%, it should be 23. I don't understand how your business model works or why we are making an exception in this case. Is it because they're build to rent? I don't understand. But I can't think of any circumstances in which a developer would come forward and say, we can't afford 10 affordable housing units.
Well, I'll offer an answer to that, and then the officer may wish to add to it. But yeah, in terms of the affordable housing policy, clearly the policy seeks the provision of affordable housing subject to viability considerations. In this case, a detailed viability assessment was undertaken originally with the application. That was then reviewed by the council's independent experts. They raised a number of queries on the conclusions and the inputs into that viability appraisal process. So there was a detailed update that was offered and provided by the applicant team. As I said, those conclusions have been fully appraised by the independent assessor and accepted, and that concludes that the scheme cannot afford to provide any affordable housing. There are reviews, as mentioned, within the Section 106 agreement that do ensure that both at an early stage and at a later completion stage, if that position changes and viability improves, then an affordable housing contribution can be made from the scheme. So that position is not fixed, it is reviewable over time. I can't comment on the other schemes that you've mentioned, but I can obviously stress here that what we have is a brownfield site that has lain vacant for over 18 years. I'm aware that there have been a number of attempts to bring this site forward previously, none of which have succeeded. And that gives you an indication, I think, of the challenges in developing brownfield sites such as this one, and that has a knock-on impact on viability.
So Stubbs.
Good afternoon. I'm not very familiar with build to rent developments, so excuse me if I ask you some questions that you might think are pretty straightforward, but who will be the single operator?
So in most cases, the operators are institutional investors who buy build to rent schemes as investment opportunities, and investors then appoint management companies, property management companies, to manage and maintain the scheme on their behalf. So as a resident, you have one point of contact, your management company you go to, who deal with your concerns in terms of upkeep and maintenance.
Thank you. So has a single operator been appointed yet?
Not as yet, no.
Okay, so that's the first question. So who will be the freeholder?
I can't answer that question, I'm afraid. I don't know the answer to that. The developer, Godwin, will ensure that the scheme is delivered and will seek an institutional investor for the scheme.
Okay, and because what I'm trying to sort of get to is build to rent, we've identified the reasons why there can't be affordable housing, but build to rent, I can already see residents having a rent, then possibly a ground rent as well, then a property maintenance, like a service charge. So there seems to be lots of potential fees for potential residents. So that's something that sort of is a bit of a concern to me. So they could have a single operator, then a freeholder they've got to pay to. Okay, right. So number 34, condition number 34 regarding the actual management company. We haven't got any details yet of what that's going to involve. So, but my understanding is that that's going to come back to the council to confirm what the management company are going to manage throughout the whole development. So we don't know any details of whether that includes drainage and what it does include actually. Do we know yet? So, do you know?
Is that a question you'd like?
Yes,
to
sorry,
answer?
it should be. For you.
So, yeah, just to confirm, in terms of sort of rentals and charges, in that respect, there will be a residential management plan, and that will cover, for example, that includes items such as leases. So that residential management plan will be stipulated within the Section 106 agreement. And in the draft Section 106 agreement, it requires that to be considered and approved by the local planning authority.
Okay,
So the residential management plan will cover a number of those items that you've mentioned.
Fabulous. And final question regarding the bins. So condition number 30. What do you understand will be the arrangement for collecting, for people to get rid of their waste from the minute it leaves their home to the authority picking them up? So what's going to happen? So someone's got their bag of waste or their bin. How's it going to go from that person to the truck?
My understanding, although I have to say I'm not entirely 100% on the details of this, and again, this would be something that would be controlled within the detailed conditions that would be provided either within the residential management plan or elsewhere within the conditions. So I think it's best for me to say that that would be dealt with by way of detailed conditions, because I have to say I don't know the details of that at this stage.
Thank you very much.
Got Councillor Trapp. Councillor Trapp, for your information, there's a list here and you were currently on the last on the list. And so we've got
Thank you very much. I think Councillor everyone would like to go with me. One is delighted that you're putting in, I suspect, things like SIPs. Is that right? Are you constructing the buildings off-site and bringing them on? And they'll be highly insulated. Is that right?
Yes, so the intention is that there'd be modern methods of construction used. As far as I am aware,
yes.
Yes, there would be off-site construction methods to be used.
That was a statement, say, applauding you. The question I have here really is, in terms of, it is the thing about car parking. I think you're quite optimistic on having 17 car parking spaces for commercial uses and 66 cycle spaces. I think that may be the wrong balance. And looking at that map, I'm not sure. I mean, the houses along Angel Grove don't have any garden, I think. They'll have some communal use towards Angel Grove, if I'm right. But I might have thought actually that the others might like to have sacrificed a bit of garden for more car parking space, actually, is my view. And I'm not sure if you considered that.
Yes, I think there's two points there. Well, I'll seek to answer as best I can. In terms of the cycle spaces and the car parking provision for the office use, again, all of that was considered in great detail as part of the scheme.
Yes.
And has been considered in great detail. I think that it's important to note that there is a transition, if you like, in the way that office spaces are used. This office space would be suitable for small and medium size occupiers. It might even be used by residents of Angel Grove for, who are looking for small office space to occupy rather than working from home. So there are, I think, accelerated by COVID, there have been changes in the way people use office space. Therefore, I think, given the location of this site, it's highly accessible. It's right for us to seek to facilitate and encourage people to make sustainable transport choices, rather than sticking with the status quo and relying on travel by private car, even when it might not be essential. If we never make it attractive or feasible for people to use their bikes, they never will. So I think we're trying to encourage people to transition to that. In terms of the Angel Grove amenity area, I think Anne mentioned this in her explanation of the footprints of the townhouses on Angel Grove. Within the top story of those spaces, there is a private, for each property, a roof terrace space, which provides private amenity for each of those properties, and that combines with the smaller amenity space at the ground floor level. So those properties do benefit from a decent amount of private amenity space.
In terms of the cycling, I applaud your idea of having sustainable travel. When I was cycling to commute about 8 miles a day, I really like the fact of having a shower at the other end. Would you be having those as well?
Yeah, so there will be facilities for cycle storage, and shower facilities can be included within the office space, because I agree with you, that's very important, not least for your co-workers.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Councillor Every.
Thank you very much, Chair. As one of the only two Ely councillors here and a councillor on the City of Ely Council, I'd just like to ask you a question. We have watched this site over the last years. We've tried time and time again to get some positive development on it, and it is great to see an opportunity to regenerate such an unattractive site. You may not be able to answer that question, but bearing in mind we've had so much interest that has never ever come to fruition. What is it about your business model that you believe is going to be successful? And if this business model is likely to be successful and no other type of business model has been successful, i.e. market dwellings, can you explain why for you this is viable and why it works and why it would be successful? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but that said, I think it's right for me to only comment on this scheme.
Fine, yeah, well that is it, yes. I mean, the scheme is different from anything else we have ever had
Yes.
towards that site, yeah.
Yes, I mean, I don't think I should sort of seek to comment on other schemes that I don't know the details of. But I think what I can say is that in this case, I know Godwin are committed to delivering the scheme and are able to deliver the scheme on the basis that's presented to you this evening. And therefore, if the scheme is approved, I can confirm that they will go ahead and actually, continue with the development.
Positive things I've heard over the last 8.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
Thank you. I believe the scheme to be very positive. You mentioned this is the first development such as this in East Cambridgeshire. Do you have any similar developments in Cambridgeshire at all like this? And can you give an example, or if you do, can you give an example of such, and how positive that has been?
I don't think there are any build-to-rent schemes, certainly in East Cambs. I can tell you that Godwin, the developer for this scheme, have successfully been involved in the delivery of similar build-to-rent schemes, not a million miles away. One in Milton Keynes, one in Derby, one in Nottingham. This is therefore a successful model for them. And it's something that I know they're committed to and want to ensure is successful.
Are there any charging points?
The intention is that there will be infrastructure for electric charging facilities, yes.
In relation to refuse, I notice you haven't got any storage places on there. And the ones on Angel Grove, where are they going to have their rubbish?
I think the full details of the refuse and waste strategy will be set out within a detailed condition that will be controlled by the council. So I can't unfortunately answer that in full detail for you tonight.
It's a trap.
Whether the final thing is done or not, the final charging thing, the actual conduit of the electricity to the parking space is actually essential, because then it is controlled by the household rather than by some kind of company outside of it.
So forgive me, I think what you're asking is that if for anybody who's an occupier, will they have easy access to an electric charging point within their demise effectively? Yeah, I think in the majority of cases that certainly is the case. I think if you look at the parking layout, I don't know how well you can see it from the diagram, but if you look at the parking layout for the majority of the proposed homes, the parking spaces are either directly in front of or in very close proximity to the properties.
I'm looking at, for instance, at the ones just above the Angel Grove houses. There's sort of six houses there, which have 3 parking spaces to the right and 3 parking spaces to the left. So they're not adjacent. So there will be wiring going into those car parking spaces ready for a charging point to be put in. Is that right?
Yeah, my understanding is that each and every property would have infrastructure provided for them within suitable access areas. Commonly, you would see a post with an electric charging facility available on
it. Christine.
Thinking about electricity and whatnot, as these houses will all remain under the one ownership, are you looking to have what sort of heating systems, for instance? Are you going to put gas boilers in, which we're told are not a good thing? Are you thinking about panels on the roof? Are you thinking about air source heaters? Have you got round to that sort of detail?
Yes, to an extent. Clearly, some of that will come at the more detailed design stage and will be for the developer rather than for myself to specify. But there is an energy strategy that's been submitted with the application that does identify how the energy efficiency of the properties can be achieved. I don't know the answer about gas boilers. I know that, frequently and more often housing developments are obviously having to move away from that. I don't know the answer to that tonight, I'm afraid.
I've got a couple of questions, if I may. Am I right? I'm just trying to get my thoughts in order. Am I right in saying that 20 of these houses are going to be used as a barrier for noise and pollution to protect the other houses that are on the sort of inside of the site? That was, I believe, suggested.
I don't think I would describe them as a barrier as such. Clearly, there are noise sensitivities surrounding the site, and the nature of a brownfield site in any location is that there are going to be site constraints that have to be overcome as best as possible. The houses fronting Angel Grove will clearly shield the houses behind them from the noise arising from the road. But those houses have been assessed in detail themselves as part of the noise assessment that was submitted with the application. And that noise assessment concludes that they will provide a suitable level of and standard of accommodation for the occupiers of those homes. So whilst they do shield the properties to the rear, they are in themselves acceptable as well.
So you're saying they're pretty, they're insulated in their own case as freestanding houses, and they also will act as a barrier to the rest of the site.
Correct, yes.
Okay. You've confirmed absolutely, I believe, so I'm just trying to get my thoughts together, that there's one parking space per house. And that's it. And that these houses, and particularly the ones I'm thinking about along Angel Grove, don't have any garden. They have a public space outside their French windows where they can sit, but that's not a part of the property. That's just sort of an open space. Am I right?
Well, just to clarify on that, so they will have a small area of amenity space at the Angel Grove side of those properties, which will be within their demise, but the landscaping scheme will be designed to sensitively differentiate that from the public open space which fronts onto Angel Grove.
So you may have paving slabs on the private ones and grass on the public area.
Correct. So it would be clear for a member of the public or another resident within the development, the area which was quotes private and the area which was publicly accessible. In addition, those properties have a private amenity roof terrace area.
Private amenity roof.
A private roof terrace for each of those properties on Angel Grove.
Yes, I heard that and I read that. So is that basically means that the bedroom is a bit smaller and the windows are coming in to the centre of the house?
I don't know if we can go back to the diagram of that, which may be helpful, but essentially a section of the top floor of those properties is set aside as a roof terrace amenity area.
So you could have a bigger room, but now you've got a smaller room because you're going to get a bit of fresh air on the outside.
Yeah, so that area there will be open. It will be open topped to the elements in the form of a roof terrace.
But the front of the houses is flat.
Yes.
Yeah. And is it an absolutely closed book for affordable housing? Because I know that there's been viability studies done, but there's just no affordable housing. And when I'm doing my pluses and minuses, I want to know there's no chance of any affordable houses on this side.
Well, I think, again, just to clarify, so the scheme as it stands at the moment cannot afford to provide affordable housing, but within the Section 106 agreement, that will be reviewed both at an early and late stage. And if that position changes and the viability improves, then there would be the possibility of an affordable housing contribution.
I'm not familiar with this model, but if I was a resident there and I'd been a tenant, you say that long-term tenancies are one of the features rather than the assured short-hold tenancies that most private properties are rented on. And I'd been there 10 years and I wanted to buy the freehold, would that be possible?
So within the Section 106 agreement, there is a covenant on build-to-rent disposals, which seeks to preclude a disposal of the properties in terms of open market housing. And there's also a clawback mechanism for the council such that if that does happen at any point in the future, there would be a contribution towards affordable housing as well.
No, so if someone had been there 10 years and their finances had improved and they wanted to buy the freehold, can they do that or can't they?
I think that may be possible, but if that is done, that would be subject to an affordable housing clawback.
I see, and SIL, presumably.
I don't know about SIL because SIL is obviously paid.
Okay, I understand, I think.
at
And
this point in
finally,
time.
I think you asked a question about where do the bins go, and you were going to find out, is that right?
Well, yeah, I think what I was meaning on that is that that would be part of the detailed refuse strategy that will be controlled by way of a condition.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I've got Christine for your first question.
Perhaps quite a domestic question, really. Unless all these properties are, inhabited by professional singles or couples who don't have much impedimenta, where do other people keep their stuff? I mean, children have all sorts of tat to keep on. Some people have hobbies or sports interests which have bulky bits of kit to be kept. Obviously, if there's no gardens, you won't have gardening equipment, but you might have a woodworking hobby. If you have a dog, I mean, we had a dog for many years and the amount of impediment we had for Roger, was immense. You can't keep that in a house. It has to go out somewhere. Where are all these people going to keep all their stuff?
It's a difficult question to answer. I think the best thing I can say is that they're designed to lifetime home standards.
I think this particular avenue is probably best left for the debate. I think that's everything, Mr. Jones. And we now go to Caroline. Thank you very much for your time. Caroline, you're going to read out a statement from Councillor Tremarco.
Thank you, Chairman. A statement from Councillor Paola Tremarco of Ely West Ward. While overall I welcome the residential and commercial development of this land, I share the concerns of residents on the issues of flooding risk and potential loss in biodiversity. I asked the Planning Committee to consider whether issues relating to flooding risk have been fully addressed in the latest plan for this development. Residents are rightly concerned about the risk of flooding to properties along Dovehouse Close, in particular, due to the presence of a natural spring that runs through their gardens. I noticed that the net loss in biodiversity has been addressed in recent documents added to this planning application. However, it appears that some of these mitigating measures are to take place post-development, both on-site and off-site, for example, habitat creation and enhancement. I asked the Planning Committee to consider how these post-development biodiversity measures are to be implemented and managed in the years ahead. Thank you for your attention to these issues.
Officer comment. Any officer comment?
Well, where would you like me to start, really? Do you...
Well, I should start at the
Right at the very
beginning and go to the end.
Okay, well, let's go back to the list that I've drawn up, which started with Dr. Thornton. Sorry, can everyone hear me? Yes, the removal of let me go to the site plan. Let's get back to basics. Okay, so here, as members were aware when they visited the site, most of the trees are actually on the periphery and to the north of the site. So yes, there are going to be some trees that were going to be removed. None of them are protected on the site, and it's common practice that, when you are developing a site, these, you do have to remove trees. So, but a tree replacement scheme would come on board, and ultimately it would provide a landscape setting for the scheme. the extensive discussions were held with our expert, our tree expert, who is, and the scheme was amended as a consequence, especially to the north of the site where most of the trees are located. So we are satisfied now that a comprehensive landscaping scheme has been provided. Yes, there will be a loss of some trees, but on the whole, most of the mature trees to the north of that public right of way will be retained. Going on to the public right of way, well, when is a public right of way not a public right of way? I've looked back on the county public right of way officer, and he has no objection to the improvements to, he says, a public footpath. So I don't know whether I can use the term as it is a public right of way or a public footpath. However, we do have a condition which will provide further information on how that will look like once the development has been finished. There is also a condition restricting through access by vehicles via the emergency exit. So further details are going to be provided by condition there. Parking. Yes, parking. It's an emotive subject and something that we discussed with the developer or the agent for quite a long period. It did result in the reduction of dwellings from 116 to 78, and then a balance was sought that, in view of the site's sustainability credentials, i.e., you couldn't get much closer to the station really unless you sort of built on the station gateway itself. Yes, people do enjoy owning a car. However, if you are providing a robust bus service, train service, it's in with walking, you are trying to encourage people from using the car, and that's the idea behind reducing the amount of parking on the site. Whilst Neil was providing his presentation, it did occur to me that it might be possible to secure some form of control of the commercial parking that's not being used during the evening and weekends, possibly of the office, to whether or not residents might be able to use that, because ultimately they'll be there. Visitors are more likely to be visiting during the weekend. So that it is possible that can be sort of built into the Section 106 agreement, should members be minded recommending approval. Crossings in Potters Lane. Again, the scheme has been scrutinised by both the Highways Development Management and the Highways Transportation team, and it was not highlighted that cyclists using and walkers using the Potters Lane would be injuriously affected by highway safety issues, and therefore a crossing point wasn't recommended. So we've taken that on face value. With regards to the affordable housing, yes, that's an element of the scheme where it doesn't provide any, and that's for members to discuss amongst themselves and weigh up in the balance of whether or not they leave the site vacant again for an extended period of time, or whether or not they look at the policies that they've supported in the development of the local plan, Ely 7 and Ely 8, in sort of transforming into a mixed use area which provides an attractive gateway into the city. Station will be enhanced to provide transport interchange facilities and complementary small-scale retail units. Sensitively designed multi-storey car parks will provide parking for commuters and visitors. New pedestrian links will draw people to the riverside, Angel Grove, and into the rest of the city. Now, as far as I'm aware, nothing has come forward. That site has been derelict for years now, I think 20 years, possibly 15, 20 years. And it's really for members to decide the pros and cons and put that in the balance of what you're reviewing today or you're assessing today on the individual merits of the scheme. There is a clawback mechanism in the section 106. There are triggers in the 106 that prevent the scheme being viable without a clawback provision in ensuring that we do get affordable housing on that site. Yes, there are issues with parking. However, as I've set out, we are in a sustainable location where I consider that the reduction in car parking is reasonable to require. On the balance of all the issues, it's up to members to decide whether they, agree with the recommendation or they don't. I've just exercised my professional judgment, and it's up for you to whether agree or disagree with me. Okay.
And we've got questions to the officer, and Councillor Jones, then Trapp. Okay, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Two questions. One, I don't think you talked about one of the concerns that was it Dr. Taylor mentioned about the amenity sites at the top of it, sort of going on to the woodland area. She seemed to be concerned, and I took it as sort of being rubbish and things like that, interfering with wildlife and the noise disturbing. Do we feel that's a legitimate concern? How far down? It's difficult to tell exactly where they're placed, but I'm assuming that green area at the top.
So again, here we have, this is the county wildlife site here. It's actually encouraging more people to actually use and enjoy the county wildlife site. Do you want me to come back to the aerial view? It's up to you, which you prefer. You have a moment, yeah. Okay, so you've got an amenity area here, breakout areas. You've got the linear park down here. You've got areas of here where you've got natural play equipment. You've got seating and benches in here, and then you've got the home zone here, which provides the community a hub basically where they can sit under the trees. You've got a public right of way or a public footpath that goes across the site here, which is actually it can't access it from this site. So it's being used at the moment as a thoroughfare to convey people, only pedestrians, I don't know if cyclists use it, to the footpath here through the county wildlife site or round here. Now, sorry,
I think it was the northern end of the site that she was particularly concerned about. That one. I take it the centre site really is the one from what I was looking at it and how it may interfere with the noise, but it does seem a little bit further back than I was imagining. I was thinking it was the other side of the path personally.
Okay, so initially we did have the applicant did have a community, I think a youth shelter here, but it's been agreed with the tree officer that all that vegetation is going to be retained and enhanced, so act as a buffer, because there are houses that will go up Potter's Lane. And therefore this acts as an appropriate screen for it. So, ultimately this is an existing public right or public footpath, so people use it anyway. In some ways, by opening it up to members of the public, it's going to be there's going to be natural surveillance all the time on it, and be managed by the company that operates the scheme. So in some ways, it's it's not going to be the parks officer that has to.
No, I think that's fine. Really, you've gone out to
Okay.
overthink.
I can carry on. If
No,
you
no,
wish.
that's fine. That's just the thing. It was just clarification exactly where they were and how we feel they may intervene with it. Can I just ask one more? And it's just clarification really. Obviously you talked about the if the change in viability of housing occurs. You specifically used the words putting it on site, and the gentleman used some slightly other words suggesting that it might be a financial contribution.
Well,
would it actually be on site or would it be a financial contribution?
Well, HO3 does provide a variety of concepts. You can either have it on site, you can have it a contribution for it off site, or a commuted lump sum payment. So they're kind of like 2 to 3 variables of how that would operate. So, but unfortunately, that would be all to do with the Section 106 agreement. So I couldn't actually tell you now whether or not they'd be provided on site or off site.
I just suppose I imagined if it wasn't until the end of it completion, then how are you going to put these in really? So I assumed it would set to be a
All I know is that there is sufficient security embedded within the Section 106 agreement that the council would get either affordable housing on the site or a commuted lump sum payment
Okay,
off
that's fine.
site.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Councillor Trapp.
Two questions. I noticed there was I think, electricity substation on the site. Is that still being maintained there? Is it one of those little square buildings just off the main road? Opposite the SUD?
Oh, sorry.
No, to the west of the big SUDs.
Here?
West, yes. There was, I think there was an electricity substation there or something like that.
I'm not sure if it's an electricity substation. I was
There was transformers on it.
transformers. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I'm sorry, Councillor Trapp, I don't know. I don't know where that's going. What it is, whether or not it's going to be removed as a consequence. I'd apologise, I don't
Or
know.
amplified because of all the housing.
Sorry?
Or amplified, enhanced because of all the housing there. Okay,
Possibly.
that's one question. The other question was, I'm not sure, it wasn't quite clear. The public right of way along the top, will that be accessible from this housing?
Yes, I'm sorry if I didn't make it clear. At the moment, it's segregated. So there's a fence that runs along the site, along here. So members of the public can only use it via Potter's Lane and then through to the other side. So one of the advantages or the benefits of this site is that it will be opened up and increase permeability, really. So you can go through the site from Potter's Lane. You can either go north via the public footpath, or again via the public footpath that comes along here. Oh, let me take you to the aerial shot, and then we know what we're talking about. Here we go. Right, there you go. Okay, so that's the drain. Okay. So that's the footpath. Yeah. And now you can see where the line is here. That's kind of where there is a fence, this fencing up now. So you can't actually go from A to B, as it were. Whereas now you've got this connectivity, you've got the red line now that includes that public right of way,
right,
all the way along the.
So you could actually use that permissive path.
Yeah,
And then get down to Angel Grove through the development.
Absolutely.
So it could be used as a bypass. Or,
yes.
Thanks very much.
Okay, well, we've now got to the debate stage, members. And so I throw it open to you. Councillor Every.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting the officer's recommendations, and I'd like to explain why. I can perceive a different type of living on this proposed site, something we've never had before, and something which we've never been able to achieve. So we haven't been able in the past to have any kind of developer that's come along with market properties with affordable housing or otherwise. And this will help regenerate our Ely Gateway and support, I think it was EY7 and EY8 that were in the plans that we have. As part of the City Council, this is something, some kind of development here has been wanted for many, many years, for over 20. And I have to look at my excitement of having a development there against, is this the right development there? And I absolutely believe that it is, for the following reasons. We have a lack of rented accommodation in Ely. We have no office accommodation whatsoever. I am absolutely in with the Potter's Lane and the Dove House Lane residents, because when I was a part of your we worked a lot hard to get those double yellow lines. I'm only hopeful that this site, which will not be a free-for-all, it will be hopefully a well-managed site where if there are issues of reckless or misbehaviour or problems with parking, that they will be dealt with. I'd like to thank Anne for such a great detailed report, and for her work on the affordable housing and on the parking.
I too am very sorry not to see affordable housing, but I am delighted to see 2-bedroom dwellings that young families can move into. I like the emphasis on the family space, and I think it's the only application I've seen lately which has ever mentioned the word youth, which is really great to see that that community is important. They've added diversity to other areas and are going to support that. So I'm absolutely behind this. I don't attend the City Council planning meetings for obvious reasons because I'm here, but I know that they had no problems with it other than the ones that I have heard the answers to today. So from a resident in Ely and from an Ely councillor, we have been wanting something like this for many, many years. And I'm just saying how delighted I am that I can, with my hand on my heart, go with the recommendation of the officer.
Proposal from
If you wish me to propose it, I will. Yes.
I'm not pushing anything down
Yes,
your
I-
throat. It's a proposal. I'll make a note of that and we'll now move on. And it's me. I'm a little bit concerned with this, and I must admit I can see the pragmatic point of view that officers have taken, but I'm not sure if I'm quite comfortable with the noise and pollution and the smells that would come to those 20 houses that are along the Angel Grove, and I'm a little bit concerned about that. I know that flats don't have, they sometimes just have a balcony, but we're talking about 52 3-bedded houses, and the size of the gardens is quite honestly something which is, to my mind, it's something that gives me a bit of difficulty. I haven't made my mind up yet, but I've got a little bit of difficulty with that. The density is fairly extreme, and I've got the parking. I accept the fact there's a railway station nearby, but not everybody wants to go to take their kids to school on a train. A lot of them they don't all go to work on the train. And although I accept it would be convenient for a certain type of customer, I think there's something a little bit unusual about having 3-bedroom houses and no garden. And Councillor Ambrose Smith talked about stuff. And I think people do accumulate stuff. So I'm in a muddle, and I don't know, and I'm going to wait until I hear all the points of view of members. Thank you. And we've now got Councillor Trapp.
Thank you. It's not often that I'm in agreement with you, Councillor Hunt. Well, I am actually, but I am slightly minded about this. But on the other hand, it is going to be rented accommodation, I suddenly realized. And the rent will match what people will know what they're getting. And if they don't like it, they don't like the noise from the Hanson plant, they don't like the idea of only having one car or this one space for a car, may have to park in Angel Grove. Or double yellow, well, I hope they don't park on double yellow lines. No, they won't. They could not keep up the rent or not keep renting it, or both, exactly. Default on that, and then there'll be a section 107 or something for defaulting rent. But so I think on the whole, I'm actually saying we ought to try it actually. I know there's not enough, but it is going to be sustainable. I hope it's going to be also very eco-friendly, which I just get the impression it might be. But there is a point there that, yeah, okay, but I'll listen more to the debate before coming to a conclusion.
Councillor Huffer.
Again, Councillor Trapp, we don't always see eye to eye on everything, but I have to say that I think this is a situation of buyer beware. People who are going to move into these apartments, houses, will know that they have a small garden, that they can't have an enormous shed to do woodworking, motorbiking or whatever. They're probably going to be aimed at younger families who are perhaps starting out. If they know what they're getting into, you know, they know what they're getting into. It's like the Hanson plant. You don't move into somewhere and expect the Hanson plant to be quiet. The Hanson plant's been there for years. People who are moving into these houses will know what they're moving into. They will look around them. They will see what accommodation is available. They'll see what their options are. If they don't like it, if it doesn't suit them, if they want to have 4 cars, then they will simply go elsewhere. This is designed specifically for a particular type of individual or family who want to live near the railway station, probably want to use their bicycles more than they would a car. It's going to be absolutely perfect for the right kind of people. They're not selling these properties, they're renting them. If it doesn't work out for them, they can give notice and go somewhere else. But I think we need to give this a try. I've listened very closely to the 2 ward councillors who are here and to Councillor Tremarcos. This has been empty for 18 years. It's an eyesore. It's a blot on the landscape. Let's put something there that at least people can get the benefit of and do something with it for the first time in 20 years. Let's go with it and let people move in and use the facilities that are there because they will have chosen to live there. They're not being put there. They will have chosen to live there. And if they don't like that choice, they can make another choice. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Stubbs.
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree with Julia and Councillor Every because I've seen this place for how many 18 years, since as long as, well, just a little bit longer than I've lived here. And it's such a waste of a piece of land. And it complies with our local plan. And again, councillors all around this table spent a lot of time and residents, we consult with many people to find out what actually would suit here. It's not perfect in some of our minds that maybe some of us wouldn't choose to live there. But as Julia said, people will know what they're getting before they actually commit themselves to it. So I think the developer's been very brave in actually committing themselves to this scheme, because we do know that many people have looked at it and walked away. And I think I have a lot of faith in what Anne's put forward in the conditions, that they will safeguard the scheme. So what does come forward will be something we will be very happy with for our residents. Yes, I think for the people in Potters Lane, Dove House Close, there might be some difficulties, but the fact that the scheme's going to be opening up to open up the scheme behind, which I wasn't even aware of, the open spaces behind there. So I think the residents that are already there may benefit from, you know, what's going to be there, because surely it'll be better than what's sitting there at the moment. And who's to say that the Hanson will be there forever? They might decide that it's time for them to move on, and then, you know, and also people might want to actually rent these who will be working in the little commercial units. Who's to say? A lot more people work from home these days, so they may not want to travel out, but they've got all the other amenities. So I think it's a very, very good scheme, given the constraints of what's already there. And I would like to support Councillor Every's proposal to support the officer and recommend that we go and go ahead with this. So thank you.
Okay, have we got any more comments? Christine and then Councillor Jones.
Listen to what how Councillor Every sort of presented her views. I do agree with her, and I will be, I think, voting to approve this. I do have the greatest reservations, and I would suggest that 5 years down the line there will be a proliferation of little plastic flat pack sheds and covered boxes, and parking will be difficult. But however, nothing's perfect, so I will be supporting the officer decision.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. No, I think I've heard many statements I would agree with from the other councillors. I'm not always sure that necessarily renters will have the choice. Yes, they have the choice whether they take it on, but I think there is a shortage in housing and renting availability. So sometimes if you need a house to rent, beggars can't be choosers, and you won't be able to make that choice. They'll be forced to live, you know, with one parking space. I mean, Ely's facilities are somewhat spread out. The hive is going to be 2-3 miles away from them effectively to access. You know, so it's not as central as the facilities are. I said schools. I don't know if St John's is the closest one, barring King's. I'm assuming these people aren't going to send them to King's. They're quite a way away, so it will certainly be a 2-3 mile hike getting the kids to school, which is a concern. However, I do agree we do need a new approach. You know, we you know, I know a lot of concern about congestion charge and things like that. You know, we do need to change to a greener environment, and perhaps, you know, encouraging the use of public transport is what we need to do. And in order to do that, we have to, you know, invest in it and see how it works. So I will certainly be guided, I think, by the local councillors. It is a good use of space in this one, and I think I'll be going with the flow and accepting this one.
Councillor Trapp.
One final thing, yeah, I'm just sorry about parking in Potter's Lane, but it is due to enforcement rather than actual, you know, the fact that people can get away with it is, so I'm sorry about that. And one hopes that this scheme will not actually encroach further onto your property.
Exceptionally, you can make a quick response. I'm now asking if any other, before I do a summing up, if any other members got something they want to contribute to the debate. Well, if that's the case, I'd like to just first of all say well done, Anne, and thank you for it. I've listened to the various colleagues I've got, and I have just swung in favour of their opinions. But I must say I can see pluses and minuses to this scheme, and it's very difficult. For the residents of Potter's Lane, I've been concerned about this for some time, and it was one of the strong arguments we used when we purchased the new car park at the dock to try and take some of the pressure off Potter's Lane. We also had, I was also involved in the double yellow lines down Potter's Lane to try and help local residents. And we are now in fairly advanced discussions with a sort of special police task force, which will be enforcing parking restrictions of people who park down Annesdale and Potter's Lane when they still don't want to pay the £3 we charge, and also park up Four Hill, interfering with ambulances and fire brigades. So we are very much aware of what Potter's Lane is, and we have tried, although you perhaps don't realise it, but there's been a lot of work gone behind. And so we move on to the vote. We have a proposal from Councillor Every, seconded by Councillor Stubbs. And as I understand it, the proposal that we would be voting for is as in the agenda, but with the addition of the bit of paper which was handed out at the start of the meeting. Is that?
And there's also the additional condition, so with delegated authority to write the additional condition regarding the travel ban.
Yes, exactly that. So we're now going to, those who agree with Councillor Every's proposal, please raise their hands. Okay.
Yep, that's unanimously in favour.
Well, that's only unanimous, so we won't go for those that are against. What we will do is we will absolutely, we'll have a break now, a comfort break, but we will be sitting and active by past. Okay, we talked about a sharp restart at 4:30, and the clock I'm looking at is 4:30. So we're now on agenda item number 7, and we have the officer's presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 7 is for the continued occupation of a temporary residential building on lands known as Alpaca Lifestyle Farm. The application has been referred to Planning Committee as it's a departure from the local development plan. The site's located off of a track from Black Bank Road, heading out of Little Downham towards Littleport. Just for some site context, as I'm aware members didn't get the opportunity to visit the site today. The site lies outside of the development envelope and is in a rural countryside location. To the north and east of the site are open fields. To the southeast of the site is a small business centre. The site's located within flood zone 3. You can see here how isolated the site is, with the only need to go down the track being to access the site itself. There's a more formal access located adjacent to this track, which is used to access to the site to the northeast, which is Ely Motorcycle Spares. The proposal's retrospective in nature, so we have the benefit of seeing the building as it stands, as you can see in the photo here. The site comprises a parcel of land with an agricultural building housing a derelict mobile home, Alpaca Farm. Immediately adjacent to this is the area in which the temporary residential building subject to this application is located, that you can see on the photo to the left there. The building comprises a standard mobile home with an extension perpendicularly attached to this. To the rear of these buildings is the area in which the alpaca are kept. The alpaca are split with females and males contained in separate areas. An alpaca shelter is also located on the land to the rear. The bottom image to the right demonstrates the informal track and limited views to the site from the public realm. I've sort of highlighted this approximately with the red circle there, just to sort of show that you can't see it. This is located off of an image taken from Black Bank Road. The main considerations of the application are the principle of development, flood risk, residential amenity, visual amenity, highways, biodiversity, and human rights. There's quite a lot to consider in the context of this application with the previous history on the site. So as previously mentioned, the site's outside of the development framework, and policy growth 2 of the local plan sets out the overall strategy for distribution of growth, which says that outside of defined development envelopes, development will be strictly controlled. So in establishing the principle of development for this application, we need to understand the site history here. So the 2008 permission gave permission for a change of use to residential for the siting of a mobile home. It's understood from the 2008 permission that the applicant's intention was to establish an alpaca breeding herd following their initial purchase of 3 breeding females in 2003. This increased to 19 alpaca in 2009, so gaining a herd of 16 animals in the space of 6 years. The application in 2008 accepted the functional need for a worker to live in close proximity to the business in order for it to be successful. No alternative accommodation was available, so the proposal was considered acceptable and therefore approved for a temporary period, expiring 36 months from the date of the decision, which meant that that consent expired on the 19th of February 2012. The time limit condition was imposed in the interests of visual amenity, as there was a degree of harm associated with the mobile home. However, it appears that the evidence submitted in support of the current application that the caravan or mobile home was not removed from the site in accordance with that condition. Moving on to the 2017 application, this was for the erection of an agricultural rural workers dwelling, which was refused. The refusal of this was on the basis that the business needs for the proposal was not justified, and the officer report stated that the profit margins were not sufficient to justify a permanent dwelling in that location. So to move on to the current application, it's understood from the information submitted that the original mobile home that gained consent in 2008 was rendered unsafe in 2017. The applicant cited a new mobile home on the site, very close to this previously approved one, connecting to existing utility services in the process. The mobile home has been extended during the 2020 lockdown. and the works undertaken in 2020 mean that it can no longer be considered a caravan as it exceeds the limits of caravan size. Whilst the building's undergone ad hoc extensions and slight movement in its location, the site itself remains broadly similar in location to the 2008 application, which you can see on the location plans there. Both the extension to the building, together with moving the building from the original position, means that the applicant cannot explore the option of submitting a lawful development certificate. As for a breach of planning control, such as a change of use or breach of condition, no enforcement action can be taken after the period of 10 years beginning the date of the breach. Therefore, the applicant would need to demonstrate that the building as it stands today with its extensions added to it was there for a period exceeding 10 years for it to be lawful through the passage of time. Under this current proposal, no information on the finances of the business have been submitted. The scale of the business has not increased to a significant extent over the past decade. It's therefore considered that the application has not demonstrated a need for permanent dwelling on the site under our rural workers policy. However, it is noted within case law that alpaca have a number of different characteristics in comparison to other livestock, which make it necessary to live close to the animals to safeguard their well-being. It's also noted in terms of location that there would be few alternatives to the applicants in terms of relocating their residential use and the ongoing maintenance of the alpaca farm somewhere within a development envelope. Officers have considered the applicant's long-standing association with the land and are conscious of the tie that the applicants have with the ongoing care of the alpaca. It's clear that the residential use of the site has been ongoing for a significant period of time and considerable weight has been given to the relationship that the applicants have with the site. In this regard, the council is sympathetic to the unique situation that presents itself and consider these as material in reaching the recommendation. There's clear justification to be living on the site in terms of the functional link with the alpaca farm, and any potential harm arising in terms of the residential use of the land is not considered significant to warrant refusal of the application. The level of harm is considered minimal, and any harm that would arise could be mitigated through the granting of a temporary permission. It's been considered reasonable in this instance to allow exception to policy growth 2 in granting approval of the application, limiting the permissions to the applicants and their lifetime, making it a personal permission. On the basis of the above supporting factors in this presentation, it's found that granting consent for the continued occupation of the temporary residential building could be justified as a departure from policy. In terms of the remaining material considerations, after establishing the principle, the proposal is retrospective, and therefore it was concluded in the consideration of the principle of development that there would not be any other suitable locations for the siting of the residential building in connection with the alpaca business. So it's not considered, it's not required to apply the sequential test. The exception test requires consideration of the wider sustainability benefits of the development, and the development would need to be safe and residual risks managed. There's clear justification in needing to live at the site, given the care the alpaca require. Whilst it is an unusual situation, the applicants have lived in such a manner for a significant period of time and have managed any potential flood risk during this time. It's considered that residual risk can be managed through mitigation measures as outlined with the submitted flood risk assessment submitted with this application, which notes that the floor levels of the mobile home is estimated to be 1 metre above the surrounding ground levels. In addition to this, it's recommended that the occupier of the building registers with the Floodline Direct Warning Service to receive any future flood warnings. In this case, these measures can be relied upon given the functional need of the building in this location, and the mitigation measures could be secured through condition. In terms of visual amenity, views of the building are largely restricted from the public realm due to the location down the access track. It's noted that the proposal is not of great architectural merit and would result in a degree of harm to the countryside location. However, this is outweighed by the applicant's personal need to live on site. Given the temporary permission, any harm arising will be removed when the site is no longer needed for such purposes by the applicants. As such, although the proposal is not in strict accordance with the local plan policies in regards to visual impacts, the need for the proposal outweighs any harm. Due to the low scale alpaca business and the proposal benefiting only from one singular residential building, the proposal does not generate high volumes of daily traffic movements. No objection has been raised by the council's highways advisors in terms of any parking deficiency or shortfall. And from what can be seen on the site, sufficient space is available for parking and turning. Although the access track is unmade and informal in nature, the site's been accessed this way for a number of years, and it would be unreasonable to request enhancements to this track for highways reasons without concerns to highway safety itself. Unique to this application, we do need to consider human rights. So Section 6 of the Human Rights Act 1998 prohibits authorities from acting in a way which is incompatible with convention rights. Convention rights likely to be relevant to this include Article 8 of the Convention, the right to respect for private and family life. Members therefore need to satisfy themselves that any potential adverse impacts are acceptable and that any potential interference with the convention rights will be legitimate and justified, necessary and proportionate. Both public and private interests are to be taken into account in the exercise of the council's powers and duties. Granting a temporary personal consent is one way in which we can protect such rights. Where members minded to refuse the application, they need to satisfy themselves that any effect of this decision on human rights of the applicant is clearly outweighed by the wider public interest. There are just a couple of remaining material considerations relating to residential amenity and biodiversity. As you saw in the aerial photography, the proposed building is considered to be far enough away from neighbouring dwellings to ensure that there be no significant harm to neighbours. In addition, the baseline biodiversity of the building is considered generally low and no biodiversity enhancements are proposed, but based on the existing situation, together with the temporary nature of the application, it would not be considered necessary or reasonable to impose a condition requesting biodiversity enhancements. So turning to planning balance, in accordance with section 38(6), the Planning Compulsory Purchase Act, applications must be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Approval would be a departure from Grove 2 of the local plan, but in balancing the material considerations, officers have given weight to the applicant's extensive association with the site and the continued care of the alpaca, with the option of limiting the approval to a personal permission for the applicants. The council has considered the unique circumstances and the unlikelihood for a suitable site within the development envelope to become available for such mix of uses. On the basis the application is recommended for approval for personal permission for the applicants, subject to conditions and a section 106 legal agreement, securing that when the site is no longer needed, it should revert back to its previous agricultural use and any residential buildings should be removed. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We've really moved, we haven't got many people here involved, so members, have you got any questions you want to ask the officer? Councillor Trapp.
Thank you. The alpaca business is still going on.
Yes, the alpaca business is going on.
And from what I gather from your, just to confirm it from your, what you said, that that when one needs someone alpaca guiding or whatever, so you need an alpaca herd or something, herding, you need someone on site.
Yes, alpaca.
When the shepherding doesn't work, that's for sheep. There you go. Yeah, alpaca herder. You need an alpaca herder there. So this seems to be, here's employment, here's work. This needs to be on site.
Yeah, correct. Alpaca have quite unique care needed, which requires immediate care to be available, and any delay in that could harm the alpaca, although that's not our primary material consideration in approving the application.
All right, so should the condition be not only the applicant's lifetime, but also the lifetime of the alpaca farm? Because this mobile home is associated with the alpaca farm, isn't it?
I think that would be giving permission. The whole purpose of this is that it's limited to the lifetime of the applicants. And by saying the farm, that could open up it could be there in 500 years' time.
Also just to,
I meant whichever is the earliest, either the alpaca farm packs up or the applicants.
I think it would be wise to leave it where the officer has suggested it. And we're into really, as far as I see it, we're into debate. Councillor Austin, I beg your pardon.
it's just breeding herds. They use the wool for products.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I think you were going to go on to mention, so the lifetime, if the farm does pack up, do they get to continue to live on site?
In this instance, yes, due to the fact that they have lived there for such a long time already.
Okay, we now move on to the debate, and as my contribution, I can tell members that I had the opportunity to visit the site quite some time ago. I would think at least a year ago. Certainly it was summertime when I was there, and it was accessible. And I would find it. I think the temporary permission that has been suggested by officers is exactly spot on. I think if I'm looking at the legal aspect in regards to human rights, there's no harm to anybody in anybody else living nearby by this operation, because it's a long way away from anybody, and the fact that the planning bus couldn't get there today just indicates how far away it is. And when we move on to other subjects, we're talking about whether or not the house is 15 metres away or 20 metres. This is I don't think you can hardly see the houses that are nearby at all. So I will be proposing that we accept the officer's recommendations, and I'd be looking for a seconder. I think you were just there, Councillor Hupper, as a seconder. So I would be doing that. I would make one comment, and is that when I did visit the site, there was a very good condition mobile home additionally on the site, and I was assured that would be removed very shortly, and we didn't have the opportunity to check whether that site is there, and it's not part of this application.
Yeah, correct. It's not part of this application. Will be explored separately should there be any other potential breach on site.
I just made that point that it was there, and I don't think it should have been.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, if any, unless, beg your pardon, Councillor Hupper.
Just very briefly, I think I've sat as a sub on this committee in the last 3 years, and we have, or the committee has granted planning permission to 2 farmers for a permanent dwelling to look after farm equipment. So to be honest with you, a temporary building to look after live animals, I think is the least we can do.
The reason I'm proposing it and you're seconding it is probably because we agree on that. So we're going to the vote now, and it's proposed by me and seconded by Councillor Hupper that we accept the officer's recommendations, and we agree in it. We agree with what she has to say. Will those in favour please raise their hand?
That was unanimous in favour.
Thank you. So that has now been approved. And if there's anybody who's in the audience who wishes to go now, then that's okay. And but you're more than welcome to stay if you wish. Right, we now move on to item number 8, and who have we got presenting? Or would you present then?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, observant members will note that I'm not Rachel Forbes, who is the case officer. Rachel was took ill earlier today, so I'm going to try to stand in. She's left me some notes, so apologies if my presentation is even more stilted and monotonous than usual, but I shall just read those. So the application is for the demolition of an existing bungalow and the erection of 2 new 4-bedroom dwellings with access and associated works at 162 West Fen Road in Ely. And members who were on the site visits this morning visited the site and saw it both in the street and from the neighbouring property to the rear. So that just shows the site in red there with the A10 to the west and neighbouring residential properties to the rear and to the side. So some site photos for any members who weren't there this morning. The picture in the top left corner shows the neighbouring dwelling 160C from the garden of the application site. Picture in the bottom left corner shows the view from the garden to the east side of 160C, looking towards the site, and the roof of the existing bungalow is just visible in that picture. Picture in the top right-hand corner looking towards the site from the adjacent private road. And the picture in the bottom right corner is the view from the garden to the west side of 160C. Again, the roof of the existing dwelling just visible in the picture. And this slide just shows the existing dwelling at 162 West Fen Road. The left-hand picture shows the private road adjacent to the site, and the right-hand slide shows the existing access to the bungalow itself. Here you've got the proposed site plan. Plan shows the 2 proposed dwellings, the combined access to the front there, along with the landscaping details. And as I explained to members on site this morning, there is an existing permission on site for the replacement of the bungalow with 2 houses. These are the elevations of the scheme proposed that we're considering today, and I'll come on to show you the elevations of the approval that exists. So you've got on this slide proposed elevations and floor plans of plot 1 on the left and plot 2 on the right. The main considerations in this case are the principle of development, the impact on visual amenity, residential amenity, highway safety and parking, ecology and trees, flood risk and drainage, contaminated land, and climate change and sustainability. So as far as principles concerned, members will be aware that Growth 2 directs growth towards development envelopes, particularly in City of Ely and our market towns, and the application site is within the development envelope of Ely. And as you see there, 2 dwellings have previously been approved on the sites, a 20 permission, which I think was granted in the middle of 2021. So remains extant. So in respect of visual amenity, the proposed dwellings in this scheme, which are sort of seen here on the left-hand side of the slide, are of a similar design to those previously approved, but will project further back into the site. Sort of see in the side elevations compared with the approved ones on the right, they are quite a bit deeper. The proposals have, as with the previous permission, the proposals have incorporated a dormer window, both the principal and rear elevations, which are seen in many dwellings in the street scene. Materials proposed are considered appropriate and similar to those previously approved. And as part of amended plans which have been submitted during the course of the application, soft landscaping plan has been included, and the trees officer has commented he's satisfied with that. And it's considered that in terms of the design and visual amenity of the area, that the proposed development is acceptable in that regard. So in respect of residential amenity, I'll explain the drawing in a second. 160C West Fen Road is situated close to the rear boundary of 162. So see my cursor, that's this one here, kind of along the back of the site. That neighbouring property has two garden areas, one to the west, accessed via a conservatory, and one to the east, which is accessed via bifolds from the living room. On this rear elevation, at ground floor level, there are windows that serve the kitchen and dining room, and at first floor level, there's an obscure glazed bathroom window. During the course of the previous application, which was permitted, amendments were made to the proposal in respect of the design, but there were also concerns regarding the resulting overlooking impact to the neighbour at 160C. Amended plans were submitted, and although the officer report concluded that the distances involved would not result in a significant overlooking impact that would warrant refusal, it was noted at that point there was still likely to be some impact on privacy, largely due to the fact that the existing dwelling at the site is single storey, whereas the two that were proposed to be approved were 2-storey and had those windows in the first floor elevations. And the impact in that case, which is the one that you can see on the right-hand side of the slide there, was considered to be just within acceptable limits in respect of overlooking. The rear elevation, the previous proposal, was roughly in line with that of the neighbouring dwelling to the east, which members saw this morning, 160 West Fen Road, where there are first floor windows present. Whereas the current proposal projects beyond this. Plot 1, so that's this dwelling here, has been amended to relocate the closest first floor window. So there was one proposed in this rear elevation here at first floor, and that's been moved to the side, so it now faces out onto the A10. But that's not possible with the first floor window on plot 2, because to put it in the side, this side here would have it facing over the garden of the neighbour, and on the other side it would it would just have a very blank outlook onto the wall and potentially some overlooking into the garden of plot 1. So that window proposed, the window in the first floor window in the rear elevation of plot 2 has remained, and that is now approximately 13 metres from the boundary, whereas when previously approved it was almost 18 metres, and it would therefore be almost 5 metres closer to the rear boundary of the site than the previous approval, and would overlook the back of 160 West Fen Road and the garden areas of that property. That would be at a significantly closer distance to that previously approved. And it's considered that overlooking of the garden as well as the windows in that elevation of 160C would result in a significant adverse impact to the residential amenity of the occupants of that property. So just turning to highway safety and parking, there has been concern raised locally regarding the highway safety aspects of the proposal, particularly in relation to the parking during construction, parking on the road, whether the parking provision is adequate for the properties, and the impact of the development on the private drive leading to those properties to the rear. And those concerns Rachel addressed in her officer's report. It's worth noting, I think, that the proposed access is very similar to the arrangement that was approved under the previous permission. The local highways authority has been consulted as part of this application and has commented that it has no objections to the scheme on highway safety grounds, and that it would have no additional impact on highway safety above what's previously been approved on the site. There has been some concern raised locally regarding the number of bedrooms proposed. now 4 per dwelling, and that this could result in more parking demand for those properties, and that potentially might be greater than the parking that's been provided. But the parking standard as set out in the council's adopted parking standards is being met by this application, i.e. 2 car parking spaces per dwelling. And in our view, and on the basis of the previous permission, it's not therefore reasonable to seek any additional parking spaces on the site. And on that basis, the proposal is considered to comply with the relevant parking and highway safety policies in the local plan. So just turning to the remaining material considerations, the application is considered to comply with relevant policies relating to those remaining considerations that you can see there. A suitable soft landscaping scheme has been submitted, and it's considered that biodiversity net gain can be achieved. The site's within flood zone 1, and the methods of foul and surface water disposal are the same as with the previous application. The council scientific officer has recommended a condition for the reporting of any unanticipated contamination, which we would almost put on a standard anyway. Whilst no sustainability measures have been put forward in this case, in officer view, that's given this sort of limited scale of the scheme, that's not sufficient to be worthy of another reason for refusal. So to summarise, the proposal seeks permission for 2 dwellings, which are of a similar layout and scale to that approved under the previous permission. However, the dwellings project further back into site than they did as part of that previous scheme. The officer report for that previous scheme concluded that there was likely to be some impact in respect of overlooking of the neighbouring property to the rear. But given the distances involved, it was not considered to be so significant as to warrant refusal. And this application brings the window closer to the neighbouring dwelling, and that is considered to result in significant overlooking impacts, which would be contrary to the relevant policies in respect of residential amenities, so growth 2 that you've got there, and EMV 2 as well. And on that basis, the application's recommended for refusal.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. We've got a speaker, Bernard Dooling. And if you would, you've got 5 minutes, Mr. Dooling. And the red light will come on when you've hit 5 minutes. And that's
Thank you, Chairman. Afternoon all. My name's Bernard Dooling. I live at number 160 West Fen Road. Now, the proposed site wishes to be increased to these new buildings. The developers purchased the land with the agreement of 2 3-bedroom houses. The previous owner of the land who sold it to them had tried for 2 4-bedrooms and had then agreed to come down to 2 3-bedrooms because it was unsuitable. And although the houses, they're willing to put more bedrooms on, but they're not willing to put more parking spaces in because of the COM8 or whatever. Therefore, they don't need them. But what the planning officer's not mentioned is that plot 1 is within 35 feet of a 60-mile-an-hour limit. A car coming around the blind corner at 30 needs 75 feet to stop. At 40, they need 118 feet to stop. If we end up with 4 bedrooms and 4 cars, we're going to end up on each property, we're going to end up with 4 cars parked along the road in front of those. The tendency for them to do is to park half on the verge, half on the road. The verge is not a tarmac verge, it's a grass verge. It will cut up in winter, it will be a mess. But on top of that, you know, it's, I've lost my pot there for a bit. Yeah, it is a public right-of-way footpath. Even I noticed you councillors come this morning, you got out of the bus, you walked down the road, you didn't walk down the grass. And if we have cars parked on there, people would find themselves with children going to the Ely Village, the McDonald's and the cinema, having to walk down the road. When they come back from there, they come out of Ely Village and they walk along the grass. But if the cars are parked on it, also between 160 and the proposed development, there is an access drive which is access to 3 4-bedroom houses behind, which I have to declare I designed the 3 4-bedroom houses. So, you know, they are also expressing they have difficulties. When anybody parks on that grass verge, they have difficulties of seeing cars coming off the A10, which come at quite considerable speed. Even while you councillors were there today talking, I counted nearly 30 cars came around that corner. And, you know, it's for cars to be parked on that road is not, well, I've tried to get in touch with the highways again because we don't believe the highways people have even come out and looked at it really. And then one of the neighbours has told me this morning that he has arranged for a meeting in December with the highways again on site, because even the 30-mile-an-hour limit is obscured by trees behind a tree. So anybody coming around the corner can say there is no speed limit at the moment. But I know that is irrelevant because that can be cut back. But, you know, we do have a problem with parking on that road. And the neighbours are proposing that double yellow lines are put from the bypass up to on one side of the road to keep the road at least half clear. Alternatively, we would also like a tarmac pavement along our side of the road up to Columbine Road. But I mean, the council, the highways are saying that their budget is limited, so they can't meet it. But basically, that's my proposal. You, as councillors at the previous meeting, have agreed that construction vehicles cannot park outside. Sorry, I'm pointing. Construction vehicles cannot park outside during construction, but when construction is finished, the residents can start parking there. So what is the difference? You know, I've seen, since I've lived in West Bend Road, I've seen 3 cars written off, parked cars written off in front of my house by other cars coming around the corner. They're not reported to the highways because nobody's injured. And it just seems, you know, if we get in a position, you're willing to enlarge the houses and take the room. Why couldn't the houses just have been, the original house have been pushed back further and additional parking? They have a shared drive. If the person decides to park his car in that shared drive, the other car cannot turn and has to go out in reverse gear. 30, 40, 50 feet from a 60-mile-an-hour limit. You know, I know I'm ranting a bit, but, you know, what more can I say? I think the application should, if they're not willing to put more parking spaces in the application, we're going back to the old story of what we've learned previously, is parking is so, everybody seems to think cars are suddenly going to disappear, but they're not. If anything, there are going to be more cars about in the future. And, you know, it just seems incredible that we can let this situation go on. I think that's enough said.
If you'll just sit there and wait, because members may have questions for you. I've got a bit of assurance for you. In a previous life, I was a county councillor and involved with the establishment of a little island just by that junction and an extra light that lit up so that cyclists from Sutton and Witchford could go to the school and also the leisure village. So I'm very familiar with the curbs there, where the power cables go underneath the grass. And so I have an intimate knowledge of that junction, and everything you've said, I believe, is true. Anyway, members, any questions? No? Okay, in which case, thank you. Well, if you'd like, yes, please.
Have a go, have a go.
You make mention of the parking,
yeah,
but also there's the intrusion further down beyond you, isn't there?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
The proposed plans are going further down into the back.
Yes, yes. I haven't really, my objection is solely really with the parking, not so much the plans, although the houses could have been pushed back another 2 meters, because they're increasing the house by 4 meters. If they'd increased the house by 2 meters, you could have put another parking space in front of each house, 2 meter parking
But
space.
you're saying the parking is going to be the biggest.
It's the parking. I'm frightened for the safety for people. The local residents are getting quite concerned about it. The people behind me are quite concerned about coming out, the visibility. There have already been one argument with a car parked on the verge. The neighbour come out, car parked on the verge, he couldn't see. And had a close miss and got an argument.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman, councillors and planning team. You've just heard from the planning officer the single reason why you have been recommended to refuse this application. It has been suggested that plot number 2 only is contrary to policy EMV2 of the council's local plan. As such, would result in significant adverse impact to residential amenity by virtue of a first floor bedroom window in the rear elevation overlooking the garden and rear elevation of the neighbouring dwelling at 160C West Fen Road. The officer has no issues with the design, layout or impact created by the proposals put forward on plot number 1. Given that at first floor level, the rear bedroom window faces out towards the west, the A10, and not the north towards 160C. So if I could just re-emphasise, this application is here for you today to judge whether the impact from the first floor window near first floor rear master bedroom window of plot number 2 is contrary to policy EMV2 of the local plan. Councillor Whelan kindly asked for this application to be called in and determined at committee as the applicant and myself as agent felt that the reason for suggested refusal was unjust. We thank Councillor Whelan for her time and site visit. The site already has an extant valid permission for 2 dwellings, so we are not proposing an increase in housing numbers, vehicle movements or highway safety that would not already occur under the current scheme. The previous speaker himself has just acknowledged that he designed the 3 dwellings to the rear, all accessed off the private drive, only 10 metres further down the road. The majority of the neighbouring concerns and objections seem to be highway based, but this site already has permission for 2 dwellings. The visual impact of the dwellings on the setting have been assessed under this application and were deemed to be acceptable. The marginal increase in the size of the dwellings to accommodate a 4th bedroom is considered acceptable. In paragraph 7.3.9 of the officer's report, it acknowledges that there is no overbearing impact on neighbouring dwellings due to sufficient distances between the proposed dwelling and neighbouring properties. We are constantly told as agents that each application should be taken on its own merits and to use the supplementary design guide as a basis for preparation of schemes to afford compliance with policy. The design guide was consulted and we believe and refer to the reasons for Councillor Whelan's calling that we are compliant with the points and recommendations set out in said document. In said document, pages 22 and 23 refers to any shortfall in window separation distances and future developers should not be made to account for any shortfall that previous applications have had from rear boundaries. So again, we come back to the only issue being the positioning and orientation of the master bedroom window from plot number 2 to the neighbouring garden of said property's rear elevation. I'm not sure whether the officer is able to get the copy of the slide up that actually shows the green circles and the purple crosses back up on the screen. But I wish to bring to the committee's attention that the master bedroom window in question on plot number 2, as now proposed, is actually in excess of 1 metre further away from the rear garden amenity space of 160C West Fen Road on the scheme under consideration here, and also positioned at a more obscure angle than the rear elevation, than the rear facing window that is already approved as part of the previous scheme on plot number 1. I quote the officer when I say the overlooking is more severe than the scheme previously submitted, as the first floor window is materially closer to the neighbouring dwelling. I'm sure with this as consideration, you can understand the reasons for my client's frustration and their request that this application be called in and heard at planning committee today. Whilst we would acknowledge that the rear elevation of plot number 2 is closer to 160 West Fen Road, it in itself has been judged as being acceptable. The distance, the window in question is actually further away than the window permitted on plot number 1 of the previous scheme. In either instance, views of the rear elevation of 160C West Fen Road are not possible from the windows in question from plot number 2, and the overlooking situation is no different to that already deemed acceptable on plot number 1 of the previous scheme. We hope that in conclusion and with consideration to our argument, you will be sympathetic to our proposals and go against the officer's recommendation and approve this application. Many thanks to you all for listening. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Members, questions? Julia? And is Councillor Truck moving? Yes, I think Councillor.
Sorry, Chair. Could you just clarify the point that you've just made to say that plot 1 in the original application is 5.6 metres from the boundary? Am I being thick? 15.6 metres from the boundary, and what is 15.8? Is that more or less? Am I being?
I didn't actually quote distances, Councillor Huff.
1 foot.
I didn't actually quote distances. What I referred to was the green circle shown on plot number 1, which also indicates the position of the purple cross on plot number 1 of the previously approved plans.
I'm looking at the actual figures there, because it's got the figures in the thingy next to it that shows how far away it is.
The concern was with regards to overlooking
Yeah,
from
that's-
that, from said window. And the argument I'm trying to put across is the overlooking from the yellow, from the green circle
Yes.
on the previously approved scheme is closer to the rear boundary than the yellow star on the current scheme. So in principle, the overlooking issue has already been established and is closer, a metre closer than what has already been approved on plot number 1 of the previous scheme. But we're saying it's not acceptable in this instance because of the impact on a residential amenity. Does that make sense?
I was away when they did sums. No, I'll have to have a think about that.
Councillor Trapp.
Asked the same point, and my point was that and thank you very much to whoever put on those stars, crescents, circles and crosses, that the yellow star, which is the proposed new window, is actually much nearer than any of the ones previously.
Not to the existing rear garden of 160C. Where
It is.
we're, can you point out, Dan, where the rear garden of 160C is, please?
Okay, thanks. If I understand your argument, Jamie, I think what you're saying is that this window, or this window it would be that was been approved, is closer to this portion of garden than this window which is proposed here. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So
Sorry.
on that particular part of overlooking, yes, given that we're talking about plot 1 in one case and plot 2 in another, if you measure obliquely across the site to the garden, that's true. I think from an officer point of view, the concern is the impact of this window along the, overlooking this property as a whole. So front garden, side windows. But I take the point as far as that, as far as this aspect onto this garden is concerned.
Just follow that up, please. But there is a garden to the east of that plot as well that we went through initially.
Correct.
So that would be much nearer.
Yes, these aren't questions to me, but I'm happy to say, yes, I think it is closer, yeah.
Can I come back on that, Chair, please?
Yes, I've lost track. We were at the state. I thought we were on the officer comments to the members. I thought that's where. So we're now.
Finished. We haven't officially gone to Dan, but Councillor Trapp started making it to Dan.
I thought that was what happened. So we'll restart again and further comments from the officers.
No, I think, no.
Chair, I think members may have
got-
more questions for
Mr.
the
Palmer, I'm sorry
engine.
for confusion. Has anybody got any
I think he wants to respond.
questions or have you anything you want to say?
I just wanted to respond to Councillor Trapp's comment, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
The garden to the east is, I think, the front garden upon approach to the dwelling, as opposed to a private rear garden. In which case, the overlooking issue is not necessarily irrelevant, but not viewed upon in the similar fashion that it would be if it was a private rear garden. Is that correct, Dan?
Through you, Chair, if that's acceptable. There is, I think there's an element of privacy to both gardens. Members who were there this morning will have seen it. There was a sort of, there's patio doors out onto this area of garden here, enclosed, I think, by a wall from recollection or a fence. So I think it's a slightly unusual arrangement for this dwelling, which may sort of contribute towards, why we're concerned about this. There are windows in this elevation that serve habitable rooms, and I think there is a level of amenity provided by both outside areas, one at either end of that of that elevation.
In order that we haven't missed anything, we will go back to the time where Mr. Palmer has finished his speech. And I am asking members, is there any questions that you wish to ask Mr. Palmer? No. Thank you, Mr. Palmer. We now then move on to, and it may be repetitive, but am I right in thinking you have said all you wish to say? Welcome to have.
I would just clarify that in respect of the neighbouring elevation and the boundary to the property with the neighbour at the back, that we are talking about a window which is, in our view, significantly closer than anything that's previously been approved. And just to clarify, I wasn't sure if it was quite clear when Councillor Trapp asked Mr. Dooling his view. Mr. Dooling doesn't live in the property to the rear that members went to this morning. He lives in the property to the side. So his concern, I think, is regarding highway safety. We do know that the owner of the property to the rear is concerned about his immunity. So I just wanted to clarify that for members.
Thank you. I was aware where Mr. Dooley lived, actually.
We're now gone, we're talking about members' questions for the officer. And I wanted to know, and I think you may have mentioned it, but I haven't got a record of it. What was the existing square footage of the authorised building, and what is the square footage of the application building?
Thank you, Chair. Based on the measurements that I've made, the dwellings that are approved, which are the ones you can see on the right-hand side there, have a floor area of approximately 125 square metres, which I will give you in square feet, which is 1,345 square feet. And the proposed floor area, or the floor areas for each of the proposed dwellings, is approximately 190 square metres or 2,045 square feet.
3,000 square feet.
2,000, so approximately 700 square feet more on each of the dwellings proposed over approved.
Okay. Thank you. We're now going to go. We've got Councillor Trapp again.
Could you go back to the site where you took or maybe not you, but no, further back, that one. So the bottom left is the view, is Mr. Dooley's house. What?
No, so.
No, sorry, bottom left, the one in the back with the sort of.
This one here?
This one here. Yeah, that's
Mr. Dooling's house, yes.
So that is quite, well, what we're looking at is a development now which is even closer than that.
Yes, so so if you can follow my cursor, this is the line of the bungalow. So this is the amenity area we were just discussing, which you can see is actually enclosed by a hedge and fence to a reasonable height. So this is the roof of the bungalow that's being replaced that you can see in there. Yeah. So yes, you are having, even as approved, there's a 2-storey dwelling going in here. Rachel's calculations are that the windows that were approved as part of that scheme are basically in line with these ones on Mr. Dooling's house. The proposal which is in front of you today brings those windows closer to this property in the foreground.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to establish from that viewpoint.
No problem.
So looking at that, the Mr. Dooley's property, sorry about this, is sort of overlooking. This one will be even more overlooking. Is that right, the proposal?
I think we accept there's a level of overlooking already, and obviously in terms of what's approved, there is, as noted in the case officer's original report, there is a level of overlooking. Obviously, at some point, that overlooking becomes harmful and would tip into what ought to be refused as opposed to what would be approved. And officers feel that this application crosses that line, and that's what members have got to decide. taking into context the site as it is at the moment and the level of privacy at the moment, what's been approved previously, and then what additional impact the proposal would have.
Thank you very much.
Well, we now move on to the debate. I beg your pardon, I've got councillor Stubbs talking in debate or what?
Yes.
Debate, councillor Stubbs.
Thank you, Chair. Right, okay, so we're in debate, but I'm going to actually propose that we follow the officer's recommendation, refuse this application, because I think originally the officers were very generous in actually approving what they did approve. And I know there's been much discussion about triangles, diamonds and stars and whatnot. However, I think Dan just clearly outlined what we're faced with there. And I think Councillor Trapp sort of grasped what we're really looking at in reality. So I think we definitely want to just support the officer and just refuse this application because it will be, there'll be a significant adverse impact to the residential amenity because of that first floor window and also the adjoining property. So I'd like to recommend that we support it.
Okay, I've made a note of your proposal and but we'll continue with the debate. I have councillor Huffer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy to second Councillor Stubbs' proposal. I would like to comment that an extra bedroom will almost certainly mean an extra car, regardless of what they think that which will mean on-road parking. 700 square feet to me, additional square feet would mean overdevelopment of the site. And I believe moving to within 12 metres of the boundary of somebody else's garden is way too close. So I'm quite happy to support the officer in this recommendation.
Well, I'm making a note of what you've said and you're down to second it, but we'll continue the debate. I agree with the proposer and the seconder, but I study the document and the reason why this has been recommended for refusal. A great amount hasn't been said except by the neighbour about the situation on the roads. It seems to me quite apparent that if you've got a 4-bedroom house, this is a family house with various friends and relatives and probably even more than 2 cars per house. And that road is a particularly dangerous road. And as the local residents said, you know, there are cars coming past there at a high speed and it's inappropriate. And then knowing that only 20% of the garages in Ely have got cars in them, it means that the area, the turning area, would inevitably get used for cars, and therefore there'd be parking on the road, and there would be, in my view, potential bedlam. And also, I was clear to ask a square footage of the existing permission and the proposed permission, and we're not just talking about moving a window 2 meters. We're talking about a house that is over 50% bigger than the one that's been approved. And so for all those reasons, I will be supporting Councillor Stubbs and Councillor Huffer. And we now have Councillor Trapp.
You've taken the words out of my mouth. I'm going to stop.
I don't know whether you can either really say you agree or not agree. But I'll take that which you agree. Councillor Austin.
I agree with everything that you said, Chair. It isn't my ward. I know what that road's like. It is a nightmare and it's very, very dangerous. And if it's family houses and there's going to be children, that worries me greatly. And certainly I wouldn't want a window overlooking my garden. I mean, I'm not going to do anything different in my garden, but I like to go and peg my washing out and things and not be interrupted. So thank you.
Yes, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. My only minor concern is the fact that Mr. Palmer's relevance about the technical being closer. But given that we're not actually, it's not being refused on that account, then I think, yes, unfortunately, I wasn't there to see it in real life. So I will take on the officer's point of view, and I think go along with that and be in supporting this one.
Okay, so I have a proposal from councillor Stubbs, seconded by councillor Huffer. And as I understand it at the moment, that is to refuse the application in line with the officer's recommendations. Is that correct? And everybody's understanding is that? Well, in which case we will go to a vote. Now, those in favour of the proposal by councillor Stubbs, please raise their hand.
That's unanimous.
Okay, so we don't need, planning consent has been declined in this case. If any of you would like to leave now, you're welcome to. We only have a few minutes left.
Councillor Christine Whelan sent in a statement.
Sorry, I didn't.
Oh, she told me last night she did, sorry.
But it didn't say whether she supported it or not. It was a bit.
No, I know
ambiguous.
why. Yeah, I've got the answer.
Have we resolved that issue? Well, here we go on to item number 9, but you've been waiting patiently, haven't you? And if anything, basically, I think members have probably read this, but is there some highlights of you'd like to bring up?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say I've been in post now for less than a month, and I've got to know this team, and they are working extremely hard.
Excuse me, we asked the meeting is continuing and we're. Thank you.
And I think they've had a tough time over the last few months, and yet the statistics show that their performance is still excellent. And I've got to know a lot of them, and I think they work incredibly hard. And what's not shown in these statistics is the amount of work that goes into preparing these agendas. And it's an absolute well-oiled machine, I can tell you that. And even to the extent that Dan prepared a script for me for this very item, which I'm completely ignoring, if I may say. But just on the numbers, if you look at 2021, it's slightly lower than previous years. Sorry, 2022 is slightly lower than previous years, but the last few years have been an absolute boom time across the sector. And there's a lot of big planning applications in the pipeline that are going to be coming to you over the next few months. And there's a lot of work going into that. So just because you see a slight dip in the number of applications, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden everyone's taking it easy and putting their feet up, because I can tell you that's definitely not the case. And this team are working incredibly hard, and I think they should be commended for all their hard work. And I'm looking forward to helping them out over the next few months. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I think that everyone's had a fairly busy day. I think we'll delay our festive demeanour.
There's only 2 left, Phil. I don't know quite what happened when.
Well, then maybe you can bring some more. Maybe you can bring some more in a week's time, and we can formally do it.
Next week.
Fun. I'm about to. Before we get silly, I'll now declare this meeting closed.
Councillor Hunt.
Are we noting the report?
Chair,
Of course, we are noting
Yeah.
it.
Thank that.
About what?
Could we just add and a thanks to the team? We've noted it, but we also thank you for the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Oh.
Okay. I think we all have this during the 2004.
I heard you going against the rest of the world in the back of the planning bus this morning.